will now call to order our Tuesday, February the 1st, 2002 school board meeting. As we call our meeting to order tonight, first order of business will be to approve our agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda for today.
Been moved by Dr. Carter, seconded by Ms. Morrison. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
School Board Member Charles?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, members of the board. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Tonight, as we progress through our meeting, I want to indicate particularly to the public, and that is our board norms and protocols guides this board to respect the opinions of every member of the board. And so when we are deliberating, we deliberate as a body where each person is able to articulate his or her opinions. At the end of the day, we then vote on matters that are before the board for action. Whatever that outcome is the will of the board, the direction to our superintendent and staff. And we want to be consistent with that. And I think that's very important. Each of our board members are outstanding, competent, and care about kids. And so as we have our discussions tonight and any night, persons will share their opinions, and at the end of the day, the direction of the board is based on the will of the board. And so whatever I have to say or don't have to say isn't more valuable than anyone else, vice versa. Just wanted to make that clear so that we can have fun in our board meetings, in our interfacing with the public, and everyone in the LCS family, that this board is absolutely determined to do what's best for kids and to support our outstanding administration. Having said that, we're going to have a special presentation at this time, and I'm going to ask Dr. Edwards to guide that, please.
Absolutely. So thank you. And speaking of interfacing with our community, first I'd like to give thanks to the members of our calendar committee. These are folks who volunteered to work on taking all of the feedback that we received as we prepared the school calendar for next year, put it together and have a presentation tonight with a draft calendar that is on the board agenda tonight. We are fortunate to have three parents, Samantha City, Gwen Miller-Goulder, and Keely Tuggle, who is in the audience with us tonight. We had a couple principals, Kelly Baldwin and Sherry Steele. Ms. Steele is also in the audience. A few other folks from the high school level, Aaron Mabry, Sarah Mabry, Kat Phillips, and Lucretia Scott from our HR department, representing teachers, associate principals, ITRTs, and HR, and a few of them are with us on Zoom tonight. So I'm very grateful for their support. They had a hard task if you saw all of the feedback from the calendar committee. So let me outline some of the goals that they were to achieve, and they did a great job of trying to come up with a calendar that's not perfect for everyone, but certainly met the needs as the priorities came in for many. So one of the first things as you look at the calendar, and again, a copy is on board docs, is that one of the main sources of feedback that we received was about graduation being on Memorial Day weekend. And there was a strong request to move graduation away from Memorial Day weekend. And the proposed calendar for next year does that. And you'll see that graduation is moved or proposed for Sunday, June 4th instead of Memorial Day weekend. Another source of feedback that we received, particularly from parents and some students, was that they wanted a later start date in August and not start so early in August. And also not have a full week as that first start date. So you will see August 16th is the proposed student start date, with August 15th being time for students in kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade to have time in the buildings while the other children aren't in the building, so they can familiarize themselves with the building, the expectations, who the go-to people are, and also start the next day, so it's not so far away that they forgot. Particularly, you can imagine if you're doing a tour of EC Glass and then it's a couple weeks between starting, you may forget where all your twists and turns are as you're moving through the building. So that was another goal. Parents wanted us to identify the Touching Bases Parent, Teacher, Family, Teacher conferences. So you will see on November 7th and February 20th, those days are conference days, so our entire community knows when we are having conferences. It's not that we weren't having them in the past, it's that individual schools scheduled them. This helps parents, particularly if you have students in multiple schools. You can plan accordingly, make priorities, but also make arrangements if you can't get to one child's school ahead of time. It also gives a definitive time for discussion about students' progress in both the fall and the spring. Another goal that they had from a teacher lens, that was more the parent community lens, was to have a teacher workday at the end of the marking period, or first, second, third marking period. And you will see that we did put a teacher workday at the end of each marking period. Another goal that we were unable to fulfill was to have the marking period end before the winter break in December. And it was we just didn't have enough days with a later start date for students. It was difficult to try to make that over 40 instructional days. So that did not happen, but I want everyone who requested that to know that we did consider that. We tried our best to make that happen as well. And then, of course, one other thing that came up from the staff perspective was having more days for new teacher orientation. And you'll see at the beginning of our calendar, the 3rd through the 5th of August, are days for new staff to come in, and for building principals and for department heads to work with their new staff. So all in all, I think they did a great job of trying to hit many, many goals. And remember, we started with calendar draft A, B, C, and then we had version D, and we had an opened survey. So kudos to this group for all of the work that they've done. This is for information tonight. It will be back on the board agenda for approval. And for my friends at BASS, remember, BASS is on a year-round calendar. So first we solidify the LCS calendar, and then we use this calendar to build the BASS calendar so that they are somewhat in sync, but also unique to BASS. The other thing that this great calendar committee wanted to do was, after we finished this calendar for the 22-23 school year, they wanted to get to work on next year's calendar so that we wouldn't have to wait very late and start that work. But again, following the similar priorities that we had tonight. So at this point, we will take any questions. I have members here in public who can help answer any of the questions, and some on Zoom who can also answer any questions that the board may have.
All right, this calendar manages our time and energy, so it's very important discussion only for tonight. Ms. Morrison.
Some things that we considered in the past were testing dates for spring, and I know that we had to adjust this year's because of the testing dates. Were we able to put that into place in this calendar? The SOL testing dates in the spring.
Well, to the degree that we knew where we had them, and of course, they're also changing. Remember, we have
Right.
more testing coming up in the upcoming school year because of the fall, spring, and mid-year testing.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We really don't know the dates yet, but we hope that we have certainly, based on what we have done in the past, this fall and this spring, that was the yard here, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Any other member of the board? Mr. Harvey?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Did we consider any early dismissal? I know that was something that we brought on this year for students on Wednesdays, and I'm not seeing any of that proposed in this calendar, so I just wanted to.
So we did not put any early dismissals in the calendar. We are very hopeful that we will move past where we are in terms of the coronavirus, which is plaguing us and with some of the things that we're experiencing. So we did not do it. That does not mean that should we find ourselves in a place next year where it's needed, that we won't propose it. But we did not want to assume that it needed to be in the calendar.
Dr. Brennan?
I'd like to echo Dr. Edwards' comments about the committee. This was certainly a rock star group, and I want to thank Mrs. Steele, who's here, and Gilly Tuglow, who's here tonight, is such an active parent with her children in the schools. And first of all, say the positive things which have somewhat been said, which is this format is so much easier than previous years, number one. So much easier to look at and to read, so thanks for doing that. The other is, I also heard that the new teachers really wanted to have more time. Those 3 days in front was also a great idea, so thanks for adding that to the program. And then the scheduled dates for parent-teacher conferences that come up at meetings too, which is great. So I have two simple questions. I think one is, I was a little surprised that winter break went through Monday, January 2nd, with, so New Year's is Sunday, New Year's Eve is Saturday. I was just interested in that comment of adding that extra day. And the other is that it looks like we had a fairly large number of professional days in the current calendar, like maybe 11 professional days where teachers got to work on planning and have other times. And it looks like there's a fewer number on this calendar. I just want to make sure that we have enough of those for the teachers to be able to prepare class and to have time on their own to work on their programs.
So with regard to your first question, Monday, January 2nd is considered the holiday when the first falls on a Sunday, kind of like July 4th. So that's why they kept that day off as a break. With regard to the teacher workdays, that was another thing that we talked about, whether or not to have them interspersed one a month. I think we were pretty much almost monthly this school year, or to do a different plan. And one of the things that we heard from the staff and that it's really important to have that time at the end of each marking period. So where you'll see, and if you're looking at the color-coded one, they're in yellow. They fall towards the end of the marking period, and there are 5 of them at the beginning of the school year. So in order to balance the needs for student instruction, meeting 180 days, and not having the students go beyond June 4th graduation date, we had to sacrifice some of those teacher days and put them at the beginning of the school year.
Okay.
It still adds up to the same number of days.
Thanks very much. And thank you, ladies, for all your work.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Thank the committee. Dr. Nilles?
And I just want to make sure that we're not doing any schedule or half-days. Those are,
No, there are no early
They're
release
gone.
days in this, except for the one that we normally have. I think it's on here for December, December before break
right.
is probably the only one. So, but not for COVID.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nilles. So the calendar is before us for discussion tonight, and this will encompass 2022, 23. Dr. Edwards, going forward, what are the other steps before the board takes action on this matter?
So now that we've presented it publicly, we just want extra eyes on it to make sure that we haven't missed anything, and to the best of our abilities, we've met all the needs. It will come back at the board work session for approval, and then at that point, we can get the BAS crew together to start working on the BAS calendar, and then this group can start to work on the following year's calendar. And I do want to give a shout out, and I forgot to mention this, that although I'm doing all the talking, I did almost none of the work. And this was really, truly an effort from this team, to the point where I think Kat Phillips might actually be on, and I see her there. and Sarah Mabry, they were our chair people, and kudos to them because they ran the meetings. They gained consensus, even caught some last minute things that we were like, ooh, good catch. So what you see before you is truly a community effort from people who are just vested in LCS and really care about our kids, our families, and our staff in terms of their approach. So thank you, Kat.
All right, to all of you, Dr. Brennan is waving at you, and each of us, we are waving. And boy, could we just pause and give them a hand of applause? All of this pandemic and challenges are not easy. And we want each of you to know that we appreciate the work that you're doing. At this time, if there's nothing else on that, we will now move to the next item on our agenda, D, public comment. And tonight, the board is eager to hear whatever is to be said. Before us, we have 30 minutes allocated, and to my knowledge, we have 30 minutes now. Now, I'm looking at a sheet with only one person that is prepared to speak publicly. I certainly will adjust that if there are others. And we have one voicemail. And tonight, persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures, and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to their official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, role, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of their presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson, and the total time allotted for the public comments for tonight's meeting is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. Our first in-person speaker, and may be the only in-person speaker, Dr. Carl B. Hutchison Jr., representing the NAACP and African American History Month.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the school board, and superintendent and other staff, I'm Carl Hutchison Jr., resident of the city of Lynchburg, and I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of the NAACP about African American History Month. This is a time, a period of nostalgia for me. It was in 1953 that my father, with the forward thinking of the city, I believe, at that time, was appointed to this board. He was the first African American appointed to the Lynchburg City Public Schools. And if you take note, it was done before the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. He was honored by having a school named in his honor, Carl B. Hutchison Elementary School, during his lifetime. A lot of times that does not happen. They wait until we transition until something is named for us. And so personally, we're extremely proud. But February, the shortest month of the year, is also one of the busiest. And so there are things that we start thinking about. We start thinking about, because of our spouses or significant others, we start thinking about Valentine's Day. We think about Brotherhood, Sisterhood Month, which is celebrated in the month of February. We start thinking about all of those things. And tonight I want us to start thinking about African American history. I was privileged in 1969 to be asked to teach African American history at E.C. Glass High School. It was not the first time that it was taught. Dr. Harry Ferguson taught it at Dunbar High School prior to that. And Dr. Ferguson has written a book on Lynchburg history, which included much of the work that he had talked about. We're very proud of the fact that Owen Cardwell, Linda Woodruff, Brenda Hughes, and Cecilia Jackson were the first African American students to help desegregate the schools in Lynchburg. And I remember celebrating when Judge Robert Merritt, who was federal court judge at that time, determined the plan for desegregation in the Lynchburg City Public Schools. It was a plan that became a significant plan because it became a model for schools all over the nation. We're thankful tonight that we can still celebrate a very important aspect of all of our history. I celebrate African American history all year, 365 days a year. But I'm thankful that we can celebrate together, not because any one group of people is better or more significant than any other group of people, but because I believe in the creed that all of us are created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We thank you for the opportunity that you give us to serve as citizens, and we thank you for your service to our community, because we do know that you care. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Hutchison. Is there anyone else that wants to speak publicly? I'm now going to ask the clerk to share with us, or the technology person to share with us the one voice message that we have.
Hello and good afternoon. This message is for the school board members. Nobody knows our children better than the parents. To determine our children continuing to wear masks or not, we as parents take a lot into consideration: our moral values, our child's development, our child's age, the research data, and so on, to form a risk assessment. Gathering information, basing our risk assessment, is how we decide if masks or no masks are better for our child. Our priority is our children. How can the school board continue to make that risk assessment for us, not knowing the child, not knowing the child's strengths, the vulnerabilities, or our moral values, even while going against the governor's executive order to give parents the freedom to choose? Speech therapy referrals are rising. According to Kara Goodwin, PhD, parenting translator, Psychology Today article states, not seeing the mouth makes it disproportionately harder to recognize positive emotions, and research indicates that masks make positive expressions seem less happy, suggesting that children are less likely to perceive positive emotions in others when they're wearing masks. According to speech and language pathologist Kate Beckett, who conducted a research article stating, children learn speech through watching our lips, tongue, and mouth. Children need to learn and recognize facial expressions and emotions that are essential to developmental growth. Masks are causing children speech delays, as evidenced by the rising toddler child speech therapy referrals. Masks are causing children inability to learn how to read emotions, inability to see faces of excited teachers giving them praise, inability to see friends smiling at them, inability to smile at friends as they walk by. Youth depressions are at an all-time high. Youth suicide rates are at an all-time high. Do you know how much a simple smile can change a person's entire day for the better? Feeling connected and being seen is critical. Imagine not having that during your very impressionable developmental years. Some children in vulnerable developmental stages are even creating a coping dependency on their masks. Children that now feel more comfortable hiding their face, struggling with anxiety when not wearing a mask, are missing critical self-regulation opportunities that would not involve dependency to hide their face with a mask for 7 hours while at school. Giving parents the freedom to choose utilizes that parent's expertise on that child, making a decision that is best for that specific child. Board members are forcing their own personal beliefs on all of the children, yet everyone's risk assessments are not all the same. It's actually quite different for every single child. What is even more ironic is the openness of the school board members last week to take pictures and post on social media, standing shoulder to shoulder maskless on the same day children are being told they can't enter the school without a mask. Does COVID's transmission process pause for a photo opportunity? Clearly, we know that that is nonsensical. So if the mask works as you say they do, why would you risk spreading the illness, touching shoulder to shoulder, maskless again for the sake of a photo op? On the same day, children are being turned away at school for not wearing a mask. That is all, and I will continue to contribute to these school board meetings, and I thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very, very much for your comments. We very much appreciate them. And this is all that I have for public comments tonight. Dr. Brennan?
Mr. Chair, I know we don't usually respond at public comments, but I would like to ask the board, Reverend Hutchison has been such an amazing supporter of Lynchburg City and Lynchburg City schools as he demonstrated tonight and before. He's no longer with us. I'd like this board just to recognize what he's contributed to the city and to the schools for these many years and just thank him for what he's done.
Wow. Carl Hutchison, second African American mayor in the history of our city. Thank you, Dr. Brennan. That is very kind of you. All right, that will now conclude our public comment section, and we will now move to section E, which is student representative comments. And we are so thankful for each of our reps and the fine work that they engage in. Eugen Kim will now come first from Heritage High School, followed by Jaden Scott from E.C. Glass High School.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eugene Kim, and I'm happy to be here to update everyone on Heritage High School. First of all, our Heritage High School Student Council Association is hosting a door decorating contest. Classes are invited to decorate doors on Black History Month, School Spirit, and Valentine's Day. And these doors can be decorated throughout the month of February, and judging will happen in mid-February. Heritage High School Student Council Association has also sponsored 3 basketball games and offered 50 free tickets to Heritage High School students, and this effort has been a huge success. The Heritage High School Literary Magazine is still accepting submissions. There have been some questions on how to actually submit your literary or art submission, and you just need to email your submissions to this email address, and please indicate your name, and if you want your name to remain anonymous in that final publication, and please also indicate the title of your piece. The general topic, once again, is culture, and this week's topic is your role model. The Heritage High School Theater is hosting their first showing of The Wizard of Oz on Friday, February 25th at 7 p.m. They are rehearsing right now, so good luck to our pioneers. The Heritage High School swim team has had districts rescheduled to this Friday, February 4th, with regionals coming up in the next weeks. So good luck once again to our pioneer swimmers. Moving on to our wrestling team, Heritage High School placed 3rd place at the duals wrestling meet, and with a record of 3-1. This brings our dual record to 18-5. Congratulations to our pioneers. And also thank you to the wrestling seniors, Yandel Pedroza, Paige Pierce, and Marky Wood. And they also have their district meet today, so good luck once again. Last but not least, Heritage High School track team has their indoor track seminal meet on February 5th at 9 a.m. hosted by Heritage. And this past week, Alicia Oaks won the long jump, triple jump, and 55-meter dash at Virginia Beach. So congratulations and good luck to all our sports teams. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. All right. Jaden, you can go right on.
Hi, everyone. I just realized I started talking before I turned my mic on. So I hope everyone is doing well. And we'll go ahead and get this started for class. All right. So first and foremost, I want to start off by recognizing a few of our athletes. I want to start with Mr. Spencer Knight and Mr. Wolfgang Plotch, because they are now the state champions in doubles for the Class 4 section. So I do want to say congratulations to both of them. And then I do want to take a moment to recognize Ms. Vivi Trost, because she was named first team All-American by the American Volleyball Coaches Association, as well as prepvolleyball.com. So we definitely have a lot going on in the athletic area. So I do want to take a minute to say congratulations to all of them. And then next we have just a couple of announcements from the Student Council Association. I want to start with candygrams because that's the theme for the month. We're focusing on Valentine's Day right now. So during all of our lunches, they will be set at a table to sell candygrams so that you can have those delivered during class on a specific Friday. I'm not sure exactly which one, but there will be a sign out there letting everybody know. And then I also want to let everybody know to be on the lookout for an announcement coming tomorrow for our Fun Friday themes. Instead of doing a full-on Spirit Week, we thought it would be nice to extend it to just the Fridays of February. So the first theme will be announced tomorrow. And then in honor of Black History Month, I do want to take a moment to recognize Miss India Osby. She was the winner for the annual essay competition for the Martin Luther King Jr. Lynchburg Community Council. She won first place, and so she's a junior at EC Glass. So we just want to say thank you so much for everyone that did enter, and then congratulations to Miss Osby for winning. And then we have the VTSS drawings. And this was just a drawing that was done, well, it was done randomly, but the names were put in there specifically for anyone who's attending Glass right now that had maintained A's and B's last quarter, or they showed significant improvement to their letter grade from the quarter before. And so there were 10 winners each day, and that went on for just a week at the school. So about 10 students every 5 days. So for our new 50 winners, I do want to say congratulations to all of you all. And then swinging right back to athletics, just the boys and girls basketball teams, I do want to give a special notice to them because they both took on JF last night and they both won against JF last night. So the boys ended with a score of 62-34 and the girls ended with 54-26. So I do want to say congratulations and go Toppers. And then lastly, I do want to take a minute to recognize Sergeant Maine. The Hilltopper family mourns the loss of Master Sergeant Robert Maine. Maine was introduced to Glass in 1968 when he came to teach aerospace science and leadership education. He stayed there for about 20 years and he was leading this program. And then, well, he stayed there for about 19 years leading that program. And then for the next 20 years, he continued his journey at ECG as a special education teacher and administrative assistant. So the Toppers, we do send our dearest condolences and best wishes to his family and all of his friends. He will be missed dearly, and he is very appreciated for everything that he has done for our school. And that wraps up tonight's presentation. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for your time, and together we keep climbing.
Wow. Thank you, Eugen, and
Thank you.
Jaden, for your presentations, and that is one of the glows of Lynchburg City Schools and our school board, that we have representatives who are perfecting their ability to express themselves publicly in the way in which they do, and we certainly continue to be thoughtful outside of Maine. We will now move in our agenda to the section that will address our finance report. And Section F, our finance report, and we will turn this over to Dr. Edwards.
Thank you. It's always good to hear from the kids. I do miss their presence here, but they still are very inspiring on the screen as well. So our finance report for the month of December, we have our interim CFO, Monet Davis, here with us to go over the report. Ms. Davis.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Well, as you can see, this was my first report that I've run for you guys. The last one, the previous CFO did. And I learned some things, which is why we had the cross outs. And I ended up pulling an expenditure report to date instead of to the 31st of December. So anyway, we have a correct report for you here. Your revenue received to date is 40.6. ish million at 39.66% of revenue received to date. The expenditures, the actual expenditures are 43.2 at 42.23%, and then the expenditures, including the encumbrances, are at 91 million, and that's 88.88%. And then we have our insurance, and you can see, again, there's concern, and you can kind of see where we are this year as compared to last year. It's a little higher, but we're still not just meeting our needs. So it's something to look at and possibly deal with soon. Any questions?
Any member of the board, a question at this time concerning the finance report? Dr. Nilles?
Yeah, but noticed on the purchased services under pupil transportation was quite a bit high. Can you talk
Yes,
to that?
so you brought this up last month, and we have corrected. This was a kind of with transportation and the issues we had this year. This was a purchase service we used for our SPED students that we were able to obtain, but we had to use it a little bit more than we had anticipated. So, but you'll see next month's where we have been able to move
Come
the
back in
funds.
line.
Right, been able to move the funds from a different purchase services within the transportation budget.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. Dr. Carter?
And I noticed a similar thing with facilities, especially the salaries.
So facilities, there's really only one thing in there, and that's our CIP project manager. And that's run through the CIP, through the city. They pay for him. So this will balance out by the end of the year because the city does cover his costs.
Any other member of the board, question for the finance report that is detailing transactions through December the 31st of 2021? All right, we want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
your first report in this manner, and we will continue to move forward. Now, members of the board move to section G, which is our consent agenda. Of course, any item can be pulled if you so desire, but the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that includes the minutes from our January 11th, 2022 meeting, the minutes from our special board meeting held on January 21st, 2022, the minutes from our January 25th meeting, 2022, and the Human Resources Report. Dr. Brennan?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Been moved by Dr. Brennan, second by Dr. Carter. Any further questions or discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Trost?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Board, as you can clearly see, we've been meeting right regularly here, and that's reflective of a lot of work involved. And so thank you for your commitment to this process. We will now move to H, Section H, which is School Board Member Reports. If you have a report, please indicate so. We'll begin with the Finance and Facilities Committee Chair, Dr. Nilles.
No report.
Thank you, Dr. Nilles. The Governor's School Committee, Dr. Gupta.
They had a meeting scheduled tomorrow, which has been canceled.
Yes, sir.
So the next meeting will be in March.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. Thank you very much. The Laurel Regional School, Dr. Carter.
We have a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock via the Zoom.
STEM, thank you, Dr. Carter. STEM Academy, Dr. Nellis.
We're meeting later this month.
Okay, thank you very much. And Legislative Advocacy and Community Relations Committee, to our Chair, Dr. Sinha.
Well, as you know, I attended the VSBA Capital Conference last week, January 24th and 25th. Among the speakers were the new Secretary of Education, Amy Rogstad-Gadira. She's formerly a consultant and national expert on the use of data in education policy. She made the observation that education has been front page news, which she sees as a good thing, even though there's been a lot of controversy and divisiveness that have come out of that, because she believes that the most important thing we can do for a vibrant democracy, economy, and society is educate our children. Parents are concerned, invested, and listening, and that's a good thing. And the governor's priority, as is obvious in his earlier actions, is to listen to parents and remind that all parents have the right to make decisions about their children's education, health, and well-being. She related that the governor is committed to investments in broadband buildings, and how we will use data to help children who've been left behind, recognizing that we still have, although we can brag about the high quality of Virginia K-12 education, it's not working for every student, and so made a commitment to look at ways that we can resolve that and renew focus on how we prepare students for life in general. A priority of the governor is to expand funding for school choice, and she said that the Governor Youngkin's administration and her office are committed to lowering the temperature of debate and divisiveness, which is a good thing. We had an opportunity to visit with our local delegation, and I appreciate all of them for making time to see Dr. Coleman and myself. We saw Delegate Wendell Walker, who has sponsored HB 89, which eliminates the exception that had been added in 2020 that excluded from the definition of disorderly conduct actions by elementary or secondary student occurring at school, on a school bus, or at a school-sponsored activity. And this is in large response to the escalating or more frequent incidents of fighting and other troubling behaviors, if you will, by students that we've seen, which was happening prior to COVID, but seems to, at least the perception is that statewide it's on the rise. Walker also supports increasing teacher salaries, and I also reminded him that we employ more than just teachers, that there is a worker shortage, and that we need to be competitive in all areas of hiring, and he agreed with that. Next, we met with Senator Mark Peake, who he didn't talk specifically about his legislation. He does have a proposal, Senate Bill 178, regarding public school teachers' probationary terms of service, grounds of dismissal, and dismissal hearings. I've provided all this detail in a bunch of handouts that were exclusively for conference participants, but they've been uploaded, thank you, Ms. Day, to Board Docs, so you can look at all that detail. Peake also supports increasing teacher salaries, and I also reminded him that we can't forget everybody else. Next, we visited Delegate Byron, who talked to us briefly about her initiative to leverage the resources of community colleges to work with K-12 in expanding career tech education, which is already underway. We had a presentation on that right before COVID hit for our regional conference, so it's good to get the support there. And then finally, we met with Senator Newman, who spoke to us about a bill that he's presented to support using a higher percentage of lottery proceeds to fund school construction and modernization. You know, his point is that most of that's a local burden, and he thinks states should provide more financial support for all of that. And he too supports teacher salary increases. And again, there's a lot more detail in there. And you'll see more frequently things from J.T. Kessler about legislative updates and how this all works. So we'll keep you posted. And we'll talk, the committee will talk in more detail about these things when we meet next week.
Dr. Sinha, thank you for your fine work. What I would like to also do, Dr. Carter participated virtually. Is there anything you would like to add, Dr. Carter?
Well, the only thing that I would like to, that I can add is that of all of the speakers, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears and the other two, the superintendent, new superintendent of schools, and also the individual you were just talking about too, they stated that they want to make sure that every child, regardless of their zip code, could have access to the best education. But on the other side, I think they see that as maybe the need to start charter schools, lab schools, and the others in order to accomplish that. And they really did not have yet any detailed plans or any type of guidance for us regarding either the mask, the executive order for the mask, or the other guidance for any of how this is going to work out. So it's still unclear.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Gupta has a question.
I have a comment. Last Thursday, I ended up in Patrick Henry building. I don't know why I was there, but there were university presidents from all over the Commonwealth, from UVA, Tech, VCU. The governor is proposing $150 million in lab schools. And he still thinks the prototype is not clear how that money will be used, but some of that money will trickle into Lynchburg. And they had a long session in terms of what division of that lab schools will be. I don't know if that's charter school, but they're labeling it as, but I had personal conversation with Lieutenant Governor Sears, with the First Lady, and the Secretary nominee Gudera, and they all think education is their number one priority going forward, especially K through 12 education. So you may see more resources coming in our way in terms of grants from the Commonwealth.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Any other board member would like to comment on Dr. Sinha's outstanding presentation? And that was quite a sacrifice to be in Richmond those 2 days and advocate on behalf of Lynchburg City Schools. All right, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Sinha. We appreciate it. Our next reporting group, Education Task Force. And I asked the clerk to please supply you something that you had already received.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. That we had already received from the clerk of council. And so you have that letter in front of you. And it is just to report out today that, of course, while we were meeting on January the 24th, there was a 4 p.m. work session, and resolution R22003 was affirmed by a 4-3 vote to disband the task force. And then at their 7:30 regular meeting, the council approved a motion to reconsider the previous vote. And you can do that when you have voted on the prevailing side and bring it back up in the next meeting. And so that motion was passed 7-0. And just want this body to know that the task force is going to now be assessing the feasibility of completing the assignments contained in the task force original charter. And council was fully aware that we unanimously voted to allow that task force to continue in the manner in which they originally started. And they're going to be reporting to City Council any concerns that they may have. And if in the feasibility report to the city, they're expecting to have that by March the 8th, and the task force will let them know if they need additional time to accomplish that task. And so this board will then wait to hear what will happen from there. Any questions on the Education Task Force? All right, thank you all very much. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for your working with that as well. And by the way, this original task force that is going to go forward, this chair is encouraging School Board Member Morrison and Dr. Gupta to make sure, since you can give an accounting of what actually happened as those reports are being reported out. Thank you very much. All right, Partners in Education, Dr. Brennan and Dr. Coleman. Well, we got so much going on with that right now. And so I tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to do like some of the others and say we don't have a report for you tonight at this time on that. Item 8, Education Foundation, Dr. Sinha and Mr. Trost.
Yes, I reached out to the executive director, and we are in the process of putting a meeting on the books. Dr. Sinha and I conferred, and I spoke with the executive director, and we believe that a semi-annual meeting seems to be in the works as the best for all parties involved, and we expect it to be within the next month or so, our first one of this year.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any other comments on that? Very good. And lastly, with the Beacon of Hope, Dr. Nillis and Dr. Sinha?
No report.
No problem at all. And I do know that we can get with Laura Hamilton and kind of see the direction going forward with that in all of these groups. And so thank you again, board members. One additional task that each of you have as you seek to serve our kids. We will now move to section I, which is our comprehensive strategic plan. And you see the matters before us, and Dr. Edwards will bring on our deputy superintendent.
Absolutely. So from time to time at board members, we will bring you an overview of some of the goals and objectives from the strategic plan and give you an update on our progress at meeting those goals and objectives. Tonight is going to be about science. So I am going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Pugh to talk about strategic plan goal 1.4.1.
Yes, thank you. As you are well aware, the goal number 1 of our strategic plan focuses on student growth, development, and success. 1.4 specifically focuses on science and increasing the percentage of students that are passing the SOL assessment in science. And we are fortunate to have Ms. Kelly Davis. She is an instructional specialist at the division level, focusing on STEM and science, mostly at the elementary level. And she is here tonight to give a brief presentation about some of the things that she's been working on around strategic plan goal 1.4.1.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Let me get started. She already kind of introduced me, so she beat me to the punch. But I am the elementary STEM and science specialist. I work with K through 5 currently, but I'm trying to get the preschool little humans involved as well. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen and share. Let's see. So I have a presentation to go over the strategic plan from the elementary perspective. So let's see, our goal is to increase the SOLs at the upper level. So we're going to start with our elementary students. So the first substandard was training teachers. And as you can see, this year we've already done 2 PD with teachers. We've introduced the science kits and done an overview. We introduced the brand new science and engineering practices from the SOLs, which is basically allowing the students themselves to do those hands-on activities and exploring on their own to get a real feel for engineering and science and the excitement. And I introduced STEM to many of the classroom teachers. In February, I'm going to do another PD with our teachers, going back over our science kits, kind of a refresher, so that they understand how to do them, teach them some tips and tricks, maybe some do's and don'ts with working with them, since a lot of the SOLs changed in 2018. I'm also going to have some office hours, so any teacher pre-K through 5 will be able to meet with me one-on-one during that PD day, and I can answer any of their questions, give them some help that they need. And then in March, we are going to do a really deep dive into that science and engineering, which is that hands-on. that's the one thing I'm really focusing on with teachers is a lot of times, teachers are short on time and they want to, do the experiment for them just to speed things up when those kids really need to be able to do it themselves. So the science and engineering piece of the SOL is where the kids are actually doing everything on their own. So I'm going to train the teachers and show them, how to do that, how to get the kids questioning and building and exploring on their own. And here is what I've done so far with introducing some more STEM into our curriculum with the little ones. I've already worked, this was with Bass, and I've done a lot of work at Bedford Hills with quite a few teachers, just showing them how they can do STEM in any of the core subjects. It doesn't have to be a science class. This was actually, we started with math, and then you can see some of the kids are filling out a portfolio. So there's a piece where they're writing and reading and researching. And then they got to do a little research with sea turtles. And when they were done, we worked in small groups to create a protective gear for the sea turtles to help, since all of the predators are on the beach when they're born, they were able to create designs to protect the little baby turtles as they travel from their nest to the ocean. So it was a neat way to show them that it doesn't have to be a standalone. This is something they could start in language arts class, move through math, and then into science, and do this one giant activity. Another thing we're going to do is get more nonfiction readers. I've already spoken with IT, and I'm looking at one thing is Science A to Z, and it's pre-K through 5, I believe, and they have nonfiction readers on grade level. And if this subscription is something we can do, I would be able to get every single science kid at every single grade level would have some type of printable hands-on reader that would go with that topic on their grade level. So that's something, as well as it has activities that I could put into the kits or teachers can use as an extension. So it would be a really good subscription to have, as well as some other readers I'm looking at purchasing that bring that nonfiction real world problem solving in. Another is looking at our data. Currently, we're looking over our Q1 and Q2 performance assessments for 3rd grade. As you all know, they took away the 3rd grade SOL test for science and social studies. So we have replaced it with performance tasks and performance assessments, which are those hands-on experiments, as well as a lot of other formative and summative assessments, that things such as exit tickets or just walking around listening to their conversations. So there's a lot of different things teachers are collecting to help us really get a feel for their progress and what we need to focus on. I actually spoke with our middle school supervisor, Tracy, and we were looking at maybe creating, just like we have the student achievement records for language arts and math with K through 3, we were thinking maybe we could make this something K through 8 with science, where the teachers just kind of at the end of each lesson, give them a score of 1 through 4, depending on whether they're developing or whether they've mastered a skill, just so we could have a little more data to keep track of where our kids are strong and where they need that extra push. And then the last is organizing PLCs with a focus on formative and summative assessments, focusing on science. We have the most amazing instructional coaches at the elementary school level, and they're a really good liaison for myself and the principals, and they meet weekly with all of our teachers, and then anything that is brought up science-wise, they're able to pass along to me, and then I can come in and help them as well. And they're constantly weekly reviewing their data and planning assessments as a group in PLCs. My goal is, hopefully when things settle down a little, like you all said with COVID, is to really get back in there and at least once a year, go to every school and sit through a day of PLCs with them so that I can actually be there and listen to what they need or how their students are doing, so I know where to focus my next goal on. And then we're also looking at, I might be able to work with 6th grade and kind of start some STEM lessons with them, because I feel like that's where a lot of it gets lost in that middle school. So I'm going to try and work with the 6th grade staff this year to show them how to walk through an entire STEM lesson with the design process and get those kids out there learning. And that is where we are so far with our science in elementary. Thank you all so much for letting me share this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Excellent, Ms. Davis.
What is a PLC?
PLC is a professional learning community.
Okay.
So it's where teachers in grade levels or departments meet together weekly, sometimes, a few times a week, to talk about different topics, specifically looking at instruction. You might be looking at data and how a particular student is, or a group of students are progressing. And I might share my data with, Ms. Edwards, and she's in my team, and I might see that her students are doing better, and so we would have a conversation about what she's doing, perhaps that I'm not doing. I might then be able to go in and observe her class. So they're looking at data, they're talking about lesson planning, they're talking about all things instruction. So years back, we would have, grade level meetings, department meetings, and you'd talk about planning a field trip, or you'd, collect money for this, that, and the other. Now the meetings are really focused on learning together as teachers and educators about students and instruction.
And is that just a Lynchburg City school?
Oh, no.
System? Okay, it's like a listserv?
Well, the Lynchburg City school system is, so each grade level at elementary and each department at secondary would have a PLC. But PLCs are worldwide, but they're specific to your school. But there are opportunities for our grade level teachers and our department teachers cross school to collaborate with each other. But typically a PLC during the week is just within that school meeting. And so it's the teachers that are in that grade level or in that department that are meeting together on a weekly basis.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. All of this is powerful information as we continue to build our capacity. Dr. Brennan.
So I'd just like to make a comment to Ms. Davis to thank her for that nice presentation, and also for getting that presentation to us well ahead of time. It was very clear, very helpful. Thank you for all your work and what you're doing. And I might aim a question at Ms. Pugh, if that's okay. I know that one of the goals for this year is to kind of look on a regular basis as far as assessing the outcomes of how we're doing with different programs. And I know that Ms. Davis said that we're currently looking at Q1 and Q2 performances. In the spectrum of the various ways you're doing this, how do you look at the performance record or how we're doing with the STEM programs? Which of those phenomena out there that you use, does that fit in, or how do you follow the progress?
She touched a little bit on that in the presentation, so I'll let her expound a little bit more on that.
Great.
That was one of the concerns I actually had, is with our elementary program, since the VDOE took away that SOL, we have a really difficult time looking at data for the elementary students when it comes to science, aside from just going into the individual classroom and look at their grade books. So we're lucky in the science kits that we have have woven in a lot of performance tasks, and each task has a rubric. The VDOE gave us sample rubrics to follow, and we kind of modified them for the grade levels. So we have rubrics that kind of give us where the kids are. We also have a lot of things in the kit, such as exit tickets and little checkoff lists, quick little activities they can do. So there's a lot of different ways that teachers are able to look at how the students are doing on a daily basis. And then those achievement records we were talking about, we thought would be a really huge data piece where the teachers could use all those little things in their classroom that they look at on a daily basis. And then at the end of each quarter, just go down a checkoff list with the SOLs that say, did the student master the skill, or they're still developing? And just letting the teachers know that it's okay that the students don't all have to master everything. It's more of a progression, so we can see, how far the students have come, what is their strong suit, what do we need to focus on. But we're able to tie a lot more in by doing things like this. Does that help?
A lot. Thank you very much, and thank you for that nice
You're welcome.
presentation.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms.
I agree with
Davis.
you, Mr. Truss. Thumbs up on that. Wonderful work. All right, we will now move to section J, which is our unfinished business. And tonight, J1 is around a school desegregation resolution. This resolution was presented to the board last meeting, and it is coming before us tonight for any additional discussion and then action. As we know, there is an African American Cultural Committee in which City Council has formed, and that committee presented to Council a few weeks ago, and they are engaged in quite a bit of work. And we're going to ask Vice Chair Carter, Dr. Carter, to read the resolution, and then we'll go from there.
In 1956, massive resistance was adopted by the Virginia state government to block the desegregation of public schools mandated by the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. U.S. Senator Harry F. Byrd, a conservative Democrat and former governor of Virginia, coined the term massive resistance, reflecting the racial views and fears of Byrd's power base in the South Side, Virginia, as well as the governor's disdain for federal government intrusion in state affairs. As part of the massive resistance policy, a pupil placement board was created, invested with the power to assign students to schools in the state. In order to transfer from one school to another, students had to make application to the pupil placement board. Whereas Fred Crack Harris and his daughter, Christabel Harris, and M.W. T.D. Thornhill Sr. and his son, W.M. Butch Thornhill Jr., both at separate times applied to the pupil placement board to be transferred from Dunbar High School to E.C. Glass High School. Both placements were rejected. And whereas both rejections necessitated a lawsuit, Jackson et al. Versus Lynchburg City School Board to require the Lynchburg City School Board to adhere to the ruling of Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. The lawsuit was filed by the parents of Cecilia Jackson, Brenda Hughes, Linda Woodruff, and Owen Caldwell. And whereas on January the 29th, 1962, Linda Woodruff and Owen Caldwell Jr. entered the doors of E.C. Glass High School as the first two African Americans to attend the previously all-white high school, thus desegregating Lynchburg City Schools. Brenda Hughes and Cecilia Jackson were arbitrarily assigned to attend E.C. Glass in the beginning of the next school year. The arbitrary decision was made because of so-called IQ scores. All four African-American students scored higher than 95% of the white students with whom they would be attending school. Whereas Christabel Harris, M.W. Butch Thornhill Jr., Cecilia Jackson, Brenda Hughes, and others who are not often mentioned in the telling of the story represents forgotten heroes. And whereas March 27, 2022, marks the 60th anniversary of the invitation by Dr. Virgil Wood and the Lynchburg Improvement Association to Martin Luther King Jr. To the city of Lynchburg and in support of the school desegregation efforts and historic speech at E.C. Glass Auditorium. And whereas January the 29th, 2022 is the 60th anniversary of the desegregation of schools in the city of Lynchburg, be it resolved that 2022 be observed in Lynchburg City Schools as a year of forgotten heroes of the Lynchburg Civil Rights Movement and part of the proud history that makes the city of Lynchburg and the city that it has become.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, for reading the resolution. This came before us on January the 25th, I believe, and we did not want to vote on it then because board members had not had a chance to look at this. You subsequently have had an opportunity to look at it, understand the context of it is simply to bring unity and support. We're in Black History Month, and the chair would recommend that the school board consider making a motion to approve the school desegregation resolution.
I move that the school board consider making a motion to approve the school desegregation resolution.
And Dr. Carter, maybe it could be worded in regards to a motion to that effect, that you're moving to approve the resolution.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, yeah.
You mean say that again?
You can, yeah. Just say it as it's coming from you.
Oh, I move that the school board consider making a motion to approve the school desegregation resolution.
Or make a motion.
I make a motion.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, and it's seconded by Dr. Brennan. Discussion at this time by board members. Okay. If there are no further questions or discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
School Board Member Charles.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan.
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha.
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta.
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you, and we will leave that up to our administration as to how that will be further shared. At this time, we will now move to J2, which is our LCS Community Update. And Dr. Edwards will lead us into that, and Deputy Superintendent Pugh.
Sure, certainly. Couple things in the community update that we wanted to share, some being about vaccines, the VISTA program. There was also a question about heating and ventilation. So I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Pugh to talk about the vaccine VISTA. And we also have Steve Gatsky and Don Floyd, I believe. I see Steve Gatsky to talk about HVAC in our schools. So Deputy Superintendent Pugh.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. First, going to cover some information about vaccination clinics. Effective January 26, 2022, VDH has canceled all LCS vaccination clinics due to low turnout. We have had some school clinics. In December, we had a school clinic at Paul Monroe Elementary School. There were 2 students who participated in that, and then at Lincoln Elementary School on the same day, there were 20 students. January 14th, the clinic was at Sheffield and Bedford Hills, and there were no students who were vaccinated. On January 21st, R.S. Payne, T.C. Miller, both had clinics, and again, there were no students who were vaccinated at those schools. We had scheduled clinics for January 7th and 14th, but those, the 7th was canceled due to the inclement weather, and the 14th VDH canceled because they didn't have enough staff to run the clinic. Again, we also had clinics scheduled for January the 28th and February the 4th, but as I mentioned, VDH has canceled them due to the low turnout in the previous clinics. For LCS staff participating, November the 5th, 2021, we had an LCS booster and vaccination clinic for staff and family members, and at that time, we had 536 individuals receive boosters. We also had some community vaccination dates. December 20th, there were 50 people who attended and received vaccinations. December 27th was at EC Glass, and there were 38. And on January 17th, again, we were going to hold one, but that was canceled due to inclement weather. The clinics at the schools that I mentioned, specifically held at the different schools, were for the students and staffs in those specific locations. But if a student or staff member from another school wanted or needed a vaccination or booster, we coordinated with them through the building principal and the school nurse to make it possible for them to come into the school to receive that. We have collaborated with VDH in hosting the clinics within the community and within our schools. And when we have them, they are open to LCS staff, students, and community members, as well as family members. We have advertised our clinics. We have sent communications to our parents, to our guardians, to our staff. We've sent it through LCS Essentials and the school correspondences. We've done it on social media. So I feel like we've done a good job of advertising and getting the word out about the clinics. We are participating in the VISTA program. Students and staff may choose to participate in either program. They do not have to participate in both. Students, obviously, will, if they're under the age of 18, they need permission from a parent to participate. The parent would register them. As of January 28th, for the week of December 6th through the 10th, there were 17 staff tested and 45 students tested. The following week, there were 5 staff and 21 students. The first week in January, 17 staff and 30 students. January 10th, 56 staff and 39 students. The week of January 17th, there were 25 staff and 15 students. And last week, there were 139 staff tested and 109 students. So there, as of the 28th of January, there were 259 staff as well as 259 students who were tested. The negative test results came back. Of those numbers, 225 were negative, 26 were positive. 2 tests were not performed, 5 tests were inconclusive, and 1 test was still in process. So any student or staff member can enroll at any time, and we have sent out information about enrollment multiple times in the past couple of weeks. I believe we'll be sending that link and information out again later this week. They can also enroll at the testing site on the day of testing. It takes less than 2 minutes to enroll. To be able, for the VISTA program, in order to receive the take-home test, if you have symptoms, you must enroll in both the programs. So if a student or a staff member wants to be able to have a take-home test with them to take home, then they would have to participate in the random sampling testing as well. Our testing numbers are picking up since we've increased the number of sites. And as of next week, we'll have testing at every school and every site except for Hutcherson Early Learning Center, and they are working on getting them set up and scheduled. And I know at the administration building, they are here every Tuesday morning from 8 to 9 o'clock. And so that is an update for vaccinations and the VISTA program.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay, all right, very good. We had the point.
We could take questions on that
Okay,
before.
very good. Mr. Trost, go right ahead.
Director Pugh, the number of 259, is that a cumulative number of discrete students, or is that discrete tests? Yeah, I think you gave a number of 259 staff, 259 students. I'm not sure those numbers are correct. Is that
Discrete tests.
tests?
So staff, like, I've been tested twice. So I tested last week, I tested again today. So that's tests.
And it's a blind test, so we have no, I guess you.
No, we do know.
Okay.
We
So
do
how many students and how many staff are enrolled? Discrete numbers. If you know.
I do, and I have that here. Enrollment. Let me go back. No, they don't have that.
Okay,
I can get you that.
that's okay. Well, you can give it to me later.
Yeah. I can certainly get that to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Trost. Dr. Brennan?
So, Ms. Pugh, thanks so much for providing all that information. As far as the VISTA program, so the testing that's being done, this is surveillance testing, or this is individual testing, or this is both?
Well, I would say it's both. So it is asymptomatic. When you walk in, they ask you if you've had any symptoms. It's asymptomatic testing, but again, it's because I'm volunteering to do that. I signed up, I'm giving them permission. I want to participate in the program. The same would be true for students. So if their parents want them to be tested on a weekly basis or not. So I didn't have to go this morning. I can skip next Tuesday, I can skip, but it's up to me as to when I want to be tested, but it's available to me.
Yeah.
It is not random. The sample has their name and birth date on it, our name and birth date on it. We drop it in, they mail it off, and then within 24 to 48 hours, you receive an email with your results.
I'm sorry, I think I didn't make that clear. So there are two forms of the program. One is surveillance testing and one is if you're symptomatic or exposed.
If
I
you're
was asking, are the numbers that we're getting, is that just the surveillance testing or is that the?
That's just a surveillance.
Just surveillance testing?
That's the surveillance.
Okay.
You're right. The other piece of the program is if I have symptoms.
Sure.
Or I've been exposed, then I can request a test, a take-home test to take home. And that you go home and there's an app on the phone, or you can also do it on the computer. And the clinician walks you through taking the test and you get your results in 15 minutes. But in order to be able to qualify to participate in the at-home testing, if you're exposed or have symptoms, you have to participate in the random sampling.
Okay. Do you know, and if you don't, that's fine, you can listen to it later, but how many tests have been positive on the students who were screened for exposure?
That I don't know because I don't know, but I do know that the Student Services Department is working on, there is a dashboard within the VISTA program, and they're working on giving me access to weekly updates on those numbers, so I'm sure that we can perhaps provide that information. But tonight, I do not have that.
Sure, that's fine, because it reflects somewhat the idea of how safe are our schools based on if you're contacted and you remain negative. It's very encouraging, so it's nice to know that. And then going back to the vaccine clinics, you lost me a little bit. I understood that the clinics that were done at individual schools were not well attended, and the health department said we're not going to do this anymore. But then there were other clinics that were student, staff, and community that actually sounded like they had a pretty good number. That was a different initiative.
That was earlier in the year when we were doing clinics together with the city of Lynchburg and then VDH, and we had a higher number of turnout then.
Okay.
But these specific clinics that we've been offering, we're trying to do vaccinations in schools and offering them, in the specific schools. And the numbers were just not high enough. I think the most we had is 22 students who received vaccinations. And this was for our elementary students. Early in the year, I believe we did some at EC Glass, and I did mention those numbers. So we had a clinic at EC Glass High School, and that was in December, and that was 50 participated. And then we had another vaccination clinic, and that was at Heritage High School, and December 27th was EC Glass, and there were 38 that participated. There was one scheduled for January 17th, but that was an inclement weather day.
Right, sure, okay. Because those numbers for the high schools don't sound too bad for me as far as the number of students who were vaccinated. I mean, that's pretty good. So I'm saying this primarily for the public and not for people in this room, but our vaccination rate in Lynchburg remains terrible, like 45%. And that is one of the things that's driving this pandemic, for our community. And I think anything that Lynchburg City Schools can do to make it more available to our students and to our staff and to our community members is a good idea. Even just setting the example of we're going to have a clinic, and it doesn't need to be necessarily maybe at individual schools. It can be at a site once a month that student, staff, or community could come. But I would just encourage Lynchburg City Schools to continue to have a process to make vaccines available, just so that we're sending that message that we think it's important. But I appreciate what's being done. I was also not that aware of the clinics themselves, so I'm sure the advertisement was good to individual schools, but maybe we can work on that some. But the real thing is, I think the idea, we want to keep the vaccine initiative going, even though it's getting harder and harder to get people to vaccinate.
Director Brown, did you want to add something?
Yes, I would just say the community clinics, we open it up to the whole community, whether you were an LCS staff member, a student, or just a community member or a family member. And I worked those clinics along with Andrea Bryant, and there were a few people that kind of came in. And so just trying to get the momentum going, we've been working with the communications department, making sure that we get the news out. We've been adding in other community sites as well that has been holding vaccination clinics. So what we've been sharing with parents have not only just been our LCS clinics at our individual elementary schools, but also we've shared our vaccination clinics within the community, and then also the sites that we know within the community, whether it's at a church or at a site, we've been sharing that out out with our families as well, trying to encourage them to get vaccinated or to get their boosters. And lastly, if we are aware that anyone needs a vaccination, our nursing team tries to work with the family to either get it done through us or through CVS or any other local provider that we know that can help the family to get their vaccination done. What we're seeing is the trend is starting to trend down in terms of, community members or families wanting to get that vaccination. So we are working very, very hard trying to make sure that we're keeping the awareness going and encouraging everyone to get those vaccinations as well. But it's going to take a community approach for them, for the community members to help us encourage everyone to get vaccinated.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for the effort that you're putting into both the testing program and the vaccinations. Thanks, really appreciate it.
And Dr. Brennan, thank you for your comments and so forth. I do want to give a shout out to Prayer of Faith, Jonathan Willis. They had an opportunity for people to come this past Saturday, and we're working with the community. And so thank you, Director Brown, for the robust opportunities that are being provided for people to take advantage of vaccinations, and we hope they will.
I believe Don Floyd is on to talk about air quality and improvements there.
I'll start off, Don. Good evening. Don and I are going to do a little tag team presentation on indoor air quality and ventilation in the schools, particularly focusing on the how we're using CARES money. I would like to start off by explaining that the standards for ventilation and indoor air quality are set by ASHRAE, which is a Society for Heating, Air Conditioning, and Refrigeration Engineers, and they set the standards that everybody designs their systems to. The first ASHRAE standard came out in 1973. There was a major update done in 2004, another major update done in 2019. And in a second, you'll see why that's important. So prior to 1973, there was no standard, a national standard. And we have 3 schools that were designed and built and HVAC systems installed at that time, and that is Sandusky Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, and Paul Monroe Elementary. Then we have a big group of schools that where systems were installed between 1973 and 2004, that those being Bedford Hills, Darrington, Perrymont, R.S. Payne, Sheffield, T.C. Miller, Dunbar, and Lincoln Middle. And then after 2004 to 2019, we had Heritage Elementary, Sandusky Middle, E.C. Glass, Heritage High, Fort Hill Community Center School, and Hutcherson and Lowell. And then our newest installation covered under the newest standards is the unit ventilator replacement we did at Bass this summer. So as you can see, our equipment varies everything from 50 and 60 years old up until being very recent. We have always put a priority on indoor air quality. We understand and we support the standards and how they affect the students in the classrooms. Indoor air quality is one of the environmental factors that greatly helps students in their learning. And so we've always put an emphasis on that. So when we got the CARES money and we were trying to figure out what we would like to do with it, we focused on those 3 schools that have had no updates to their system since they were installed in the middle to late 60s. And again, that's Sandusky Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, and Paul Monroe. When we developed our CIP plan for using the CARES money, which we took to the city council last month and got approval for, we had those 3 schools as our top priorities. And city council did approve our plan, so we will be moving forward with that. We also have projects for some of the schools that came after 1973, but prior to the update of 2004, and those are Paramount and RS Payne. So in the near future, and I'm talking about with CARES money, all of this has to be spent within the next 2 to 3 years. We will be doing projects, major renovation projects to the HVAC systems at Sandusky Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, Paul Monroe, Paramount, and RS Payne. So that is kind of the big picture as far as our major projects. Don, you want to?
Yeah, just good evening, everybody. I'm just glad to have the opportunity to speak to you for the first time as Director of Maintenance. And like Steve said, one of our goals from the beginning of the pandemic has been lowering the concentration of the SARS-CoV-2 by the use of our ventilation and filtration systems in the buildings. This helps stop the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. And our goal has been to keep these systems in the buildings operating to the best of their capacity and ability. And we've kind of done this by the following steps. We've been utilizing our HVAC staff. It consists of 7 people. One of them is a lead technician. He kind of organizes the work and filters the needs of the day. He's also utilizes our web-based control systems to monitor and make adjustments to our systems across the division. We have 6 HVAC techs, and they're charged with repairs on site as needed, preventative maintenance. This includes filter changes. Some of them are also skilled in using the web-based programming to monitor the system. Some of the key strategies they use is utilizing that system, the web-based system, to monitor the functions of our systems on a day-to-day basis, to be able to make those changes instantly to increase outside air intake. They respond to mechanical issues quickly, utilizing our work order system to try to keep these systems up and running properly. We've made a push across the division since the pandemic to increase the amount of fresh air intake into our buildings, to increase ventilation and to just help with the dissemination of the virus. We use MERV filters wherever our systems allow them. And we continue to work on installing some new ionizing systems in our units to help with the collection of finer particles in our systems. And we continue to help distribute air purifiers and box fans as needed to schools as requested. So that's just kind of an update on what we do every day to try to keep our systems operating properly and efficiently. And I guess that's about it.
Thank you. All right. Any questions?
All right, thank you, Director Floyd.
What's that?
Very good, thank you.
All right, questions, Dr. Gupta?
I just wanted to, I'm glad to see Mr. Floyd here. He inherits all his scientific critical thinking from his father, Professor Floyd, who had pleasure of working at Lynchburg College. So I'm glad you're on LCS and we're lucky to have you. So,
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Only mistake he made was let me stay in his house, the house he built. So.
Dr. Brennan?
So I also want to thank Mr. Gasky and welcome Mr. Floyd as Director of Facilities, and thank you all for all your work. And I know that I'm the thorn in the side for people related to these topics, but I, as I've said previously, I think our mitigation plan for COVID has to be multi-layered, and facilities and the air circulation is so important. So thank you all for taking care of that. And I understand, Mr. Gasky, what you're saying about previous guidelines that were necessary, put in place as of 2019. But how do we do, and I also realize that we are so handicapped by our old schools, that it's so difficult to have adequate circulation and change HVAC systems. But I think there's been criteria put regarding COVID that there should be like a circulation time of 7 times or passes per hour or something in that vicinity to help decrease COVID mitigation. Are those parameters that we have any sense for? Are we able to measure? And the other thing is there any role for using a HEPA filter machine in places where we are so limited by circulation and by the age of the buildings to bring in something that actually helps circulate the air, perhaps in larger classrooms or in auditoriums or places where it might be most effective?
Well, first of all, it's hard to adapt the system that's installed to bring in a higher quantity of air, higher volume of air, other than increasing fan speeds, or in some cases we do have dampers on the air intakes that we have opened up. So most of these systems were designed with a variable damper system on them, and they were set years ago at a minimum, or that you didn't, when the standards were lower and not as much ventilation was asked for. And we, as Don said, we've gone through and opened those dampers up in most cases to 100%. Again, though, you can open a damper, but you can't increase the opening or the size of the duct to bring in any extra air. So we are somewhat limited on that. There's a balance also in trying to heat and cool when you're bringing in that much fresh air. That all has to be balanced out. But we don't care what it's costing as far as additional heating and cooling. We're bringing in the air anyhow in order to do that. Now, as far as HEPA filters and things like that, as Don said, we are putting in air purifiers and wherever we can. The MERV 13 filters that would go in our larger air handlers, we are using them where we can on the newer equipment. It's just the filters that go in these units you can draw a parallel with face masks, and that being that a cloth face mask, which is not being recommended now, is easy to breathe through, and as you step up the filtration rating, it gets harder to breathe through them. Well, the same thing with the filters. We are currently using for a MERV 8, which is still a high filter or a high filter and filter, but they're recommending now MERV 13. That extra static pressure is not good for some of the older units, so we can't use that. But we are providing room air purifiers when we can. The problem with the bigger units, the HEPA filter systems and whatever, or equipment, is we don't have the power in a lot of these schools where we would need that sort of thing. And that's why we're trying to address from a central system aspect rather than a room by room. So like Sandusky Elementary, Lincoln Elementary, Paul Monroe, they don't have the power in the classroom to handle that kind of equipment. So that's why we're looking at, doing a full renovation of the HVAC systems in those buildings. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir, it does. And once again, thank you and Mr. Floyd and all your staff for all your good work. And thank you for that update. It's very helpful, and I will try to remove myself as the thorn in the side from Lynchburg City Administration and the school board. But thank you all for your information and your help.
We appreciate your question, Dr. Brennan. Thank you for that.
Those of us in facilities are always excited when people are interested in what we do.
That's exactly right. Mr. Trost?
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay, good. Anyone else on this matter? All right, and I know that board members had particular interest in this area, but I think we've dealt with everything that was of a concern, Dr. Edwards, and so would that complete our update?
I believe so. So I would just like to thank our team. In the last hour, you've heard an in-depth analysis of inquiry-based instruction, hands-on learning, COVID initiatives, vaccination clinics, the testing program, and now the in-depth about HVAC. So, and I haven't uttered a word. So I have a very talented and involved and invested team of people who really care about Lynchburg City Schools, and they show up every day to do this kind of work. So I just want to say kudos to them. And I know we didn't talk about the school buses, but Mr. Gasky, if you are still there, or Ms. Custer, if you are available, I remember us talking about air conditioning on the buses. Right now we're in winter, but pretty soon it's gonna get a little bit warmer on our buses. And Ms. Custer had previously shared a little update about air conditioning on school buses. So Mr. Gatsky, can you just inform the board of where we are with that?
Yes. So I think it was fund balance funds that we used to do that. I believe it was a total of 38, I think, buses that were being used on daily routes that were not air conditioned. And we had Sonny Merriman, our bus vendor, add air conditioning to all 38, and that project is complete. So every bus that we use on a regular basis, every day, is now air conditioned. And of course, that was finished up after the cooling season was over. So I'm sure those drivers will be excited to see some warm weather and try out the new equipment.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Edwards, Deputy Superintendent Pugh, for the thorough way in which staff presents to us. I would like us to do J3, which is our instruction and program policy review. Then maybe we could take a little break before we go into our final issue in this area, which would be our budget piece, if that would please the board. So we'll go on to J3, instruction and program policy review. Dr. Edwards for Director Brown.
Sure. So this is coming up for action. The board had previously seen these policies on 2 occasions before, and there were some questions that were asked and answered, but I will turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Pugh and Director Brown just to follow up.
Thank you. As Dr. Edwards mentioned, these have been before you several times. Also, when we talked last week and you looked and approved the high school program of studies, I discussed the information that was also in these policies. The student evaluation and grading procedures, the main changes were around senior exam exemptions and the AP exams. And so I believe at this point I've answered all of the questions that have come before us. And then the second one was a student course load. And thank you, Mr. Harvey, for bringing that to our attention. And that has been changed for students in 9th through 11th grade. They have to carry 7 credit-bearing courses and may elect to take another approved course in that 8th period. And there are some parameters around being able to take that elective course in the 8th period. So if there are questions, I'll take them now. And if not, we're asking for an approval.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Prue. You've heard previously on this matter, and if there is a motion to approve the instruction and program policies listed, we certainly will entertain them. Dr. Millis?
Yeah, I appreciate administration's efforts, and sometimes these things can be really painful, but I think this is definitely better. So I move to approve the two policies as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Millis, who's made the motion. Is there a second to Dr. Millis's motion?
Second.
Mr. Harvey seconded the motion. Any further questions or discussion on the motion to approve the instruction and program policies listed? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
School Board Member Mr. Trost?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
School Board Member Ms. Morrison?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Carter?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Nellis?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Sinha?
Yes.
School Board Member Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
School Board Member Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
If we could take a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back and deal with J4, which will be our operating budget discussion for 22-23. Reconvene, I believe. Yes, everybody's in place. And before we move into J4, I think we're doing a very good job of dealing with one of the most important responsibilities we have, and that is working with staff to prepare a budget and approve a budget that will move the school division forward. And so tonight, we're going to now move into that discussion again. And as always, maybe not so much tonight when the superintendent tells us what we're trying to accomplish tonight, but we're always looking to give the superintendent and staff direction. And so to that end, we want to be focused on that and to know that though we have individual opinions, the superintendent is looking for one clear direction from the board. I would like Vice Chair Dr. Carter to speak on this also in the way she would like. And then we're going to ask the superintendent to tell us clearly what we're trying to do tonight. Last time it was around pay schedules, and we gave direction. All right, Dr. Carter.
And as Dr. Coleman just stated, if we already have some questions defined or answered regarding the direction we want the superintendent to go, and that was to the document that was brought forth to us last week, is we're going to build upon that.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. Dr. Edwards.
Absolutely. So each year that I've been here, we have refined this process a little bit in response to some of the things that the school board has asked for. So you'll see it look a little different every year. But really, it is our attempt to make sure we're being as transparent as possible and also being good stewards of the money that's afforded to us. So starting with the end in mind, you all know right now we have a target date of March 15th to approve a budget to submit to City Council, and we certainly will need to give them their part number-wise prior to that. So we still have some work to do to get to what is our final number that we need in order to have our budget needs met for next school year, while also being mindful of multiple school years to come. So it's very hard to do budgeting in isolation. Last time we presented the biggest part of our budget, which is personnel. So we started with the salary proposals, making sure that we presented to you a differentiated proposal, which was very different than what we had last year. Last year we had straight percentages, one number. I think it took up 3 lines on a budget table. We were done, right? This year we have multiple pages where you actually get down to the granular employee level to see the different percentages offered to employees based on the wages that they are currently making. What I did not mention in last week's meeting was a little bit more into the process that we took. We actually met in this very room on a Saturday way back in, I don't know, when was it, September, October, along with probably the pay schedules for 6 additional school divisions. And they were the current year pay schedule. Nobody's turning over what they're doing next year yet, unless it's already been approved. But at that time, when we were building our salary proposals, we had in front of us the salaries for area divisions and a couple others to compare. In some cases, we found, wow, we're actually outpacing them. And in other cases, surprising cases, we were like, oh, did not know that, we weren't outpacing them in some areas. And some were just natural that we knew. But that information we did use to build the salary proposals that you have in front of you. We were also mindful about something that I heard last year a lot. How are you going to sustain it? How are you going to sustain it? And recognizing that I do not have the authority to raise taxes or fund my own budget, sustainability is a big question for us, particularly, and that's going to be important tonight as we look at the request list. I'm going to call it the request list. Because what we put in, unless it's a one-time request, and you'll see how some of these vary, we're going to have to sustain it. Even salary increases, unless they're bonuses, which is a one-time thing, but a salary increase is a sustainable event going forward. So we need to keep that in mind as we move forward. Also, just a reminder, the way that we built our pay schedules, particularly for everyone except the teaching pay schedule, is to match the biennium. So the years that we get money is the years that we, you'll see that's where the step goes up. Then it's frozen, then up and frozen. So it's every other year. And that was basically a commitment in 2018-19 that this school board made that said, when we get those increases, we're going to direct them to staff salary. So we are continuing with that. Tonight, I asked you to bring your binders so you could add the new piece to it. So let me, once again, I will give you an overview of what you have in front of you, what we've done, some of the budget processes that led to this, and then what our discussion will be around, and then what we need to do for next time so that we're really clear. So you should have something that's entitled, it's our working papers, Budget Requests 2022-23, dated today. And in there is a summary of what we have done. Deputy Superintendent, myself, and the interim chief financial officer, all of us are here in the room with you tonight. Met with all of the school leadership teams. So that would be a principal and assistant principal, or the whole school if that's what the principal wanted to do. And in most cases, we had a Zoom full of folks who had input on the budget, and we did the same thing with directors and their teams. And the first thing that we talked about, and we like to say, let's have a conversation about stuff, and then let's have a conversation about staff. In most instances, as I wrote in our summary, when we do the stuff line, so instructional materials, purchase services, those are the conversations we had, and we had very rich conversations with our team leaders regarding what do you have right now, what's existing, did it work for you, where do you need more or where do you need less, and was that the appropriate place for those funds? And in most instances, we ended up moving some funds here or there based on what either the principal's teams, or the department team said. And I'll give you an example of what we did. At one school, we had a larger allocation for social studies, and that's because they needed all new materials. Well, we don't need that large allocation going into the next year, but there are other areas where they're like, I'd like to decrease social studies because I don't need it. We just bought all of the materials and moved that into language arts literacy or math where we do need the materials. And what we did was listen. We listened to our department leaders where they said, I'd like to make a shift here or there. We did some predictions. There's a little bit of gambling that goes on that says we had professional development money that not only covered registration but travel, and we didn't anticipate that we would still be in COVID, so we had some real travel, hotel, and reimbursement for mileage and so on that we didn't need this year because most things were Zoom. Well, we're looking at next year, hedging our bets, and trying to have that balance between paying for travel and not paying for travel or being ready for it. So we had those types of discussions with our building principals. We had discussions about purchase services and in areas where we're contracting out for things such as instrument repair. We did get from one building leader that there was a need to increase that because they needed more instrument repair money to service their instruments, and others might have been a decrease. So those conversations regarding most of the stuff we took care of at an administrative level, and we did go line by line, because that's our job, to go line by line with the budget managers and ask them to shift funding or reduce funding. In some cases, they were like, I absolutely don't need that funding, and it might be useful in another school if they have more students or more need, or another department for that. So that work was done. You have a schedule, just so that you can get an idea, and I put it together really quickly, so I hope I have all of the dates right. We were moving some due to snow. But you have a schedule of each of the departments and schools that we met with. And it's been a long January trying to get all of this done and being thoughtful. In some cases, a meeting might have been 45 minutes. In some cases, it might have been close to 90 minutes. In some cases, it might have been 2 meetings. We had to go back and recycle. But we wanted to give the building principals and the department leaders the time that they wanted for that. So our next question came to what do we share with you? And as I stated, this process has been done multiple ways since I've been here, and even what I inherited with Tier 1, Tier 2. Last year, what we tried to do was sort of whittle it down to a reasonable budget request that we brought to you, and therefore we could take it over to the city. In some cases, that's great. Looks like we're great stewards managing money. And other folks were like, well, you're not being transparent because we don't see all of the needs. So we struggled this year with, do we show you everything that people requested as a need for next year, big ticket items, or do we funnel it so that it looks reasonable? So this year we went on the shoulders of show you everything. So what you have in front of you, multiple pages, is a request, and it is sorted by, I believe, departments or schools, so that you can see that it is pretty exhaustive in terms of the total. If you were to add all of that up, it is about $16 million worth of requests. And certainly when you dig down to a building level or department level, it seems small. When you put them all together, when you get at our level, it adds up very quickly. The other thing that you have before I start to go through these requests, at the very back of your document, you have what I'm going to refer to as the companion document, which is the expenditure summary. Last time we gave you an income summary. This is an expenditure summary. Now you get an expenditure summary every single month. This is one step more detailed, because part of what we heard you say is you want a little more detail. So where you might have just had instruction, if you look at this first page, you can see classroom instruction, instructional support students, instructional support staff, instructional support school admin. And it outlines both salaries, benefits, which is the part that we shared with you last time, but also material supplies, capital outlay, and all of those things as well. So this document is the exact same total, if you were to compare it to the one that's on the board agenda, except it has much more detail for those of you who like the detail to look into it. And the same rules apply as Ms. Davis explained in some cases where we have to make those transfers to shore up some of those areas. You might see those in a little more detail right now where we have to make those budget transfers. So you do have that information. Now, for tonight, what we want to accomplish tonight is to inform and give you an understanding of what the requests are. We have all of the directors here, either in the room with us or on screen in case there are questions, and then I can pick another night to also get principals if that's needed as well. But we wanted to go through these items so that school board members have an understanding of what is being asked at the school level and at the department level. What you will see in absence of, with the exception of compensation, which is on this list, we numbered everything 1, 2, and 3, which are the salary proposals that you received last week coming from the superintendent office. There are no requests coming from the superintendent's office or the deputy superintendent's office. And I think I need to pause and make that real clear, because often I'm the one doing the talking, so people think I just picked what I wanted to pick. I did. I picked salary proposals because I'm very, very committed to making sure that we continue to raise our salaries. But other than that, there is no other request from my office or the deputy superintendent. She has no requests outside of joining me with that. So as you go through this, you will see what was requested. You're going to see where certain buildings requested the same thing and other buildings did not request that. Now, note that each principal and each department lead are also prioritize what they brought to us. And they too struggle with, do I bring everything that I want or do I bring what I think I can get as well? So in some cases, and I will give you one example of where I know this is to be true. At the elementary level, we do not have testing coordinators. Either the assistant principal is assigned to be the person who does the SOL, or In a building where you don't have an assistant principal, it's the media specialist. That responsibility was removed from school counselors. So if it's your media specialist, and we used to only give the SOLs in the spring, we kind of shut down the library a little bit so the media specialist could do the testing. Now we're testing fall and in the winter and in the spring. And if it's still the media specialist, that could be problematic for buildings, or even if it's the assistant principal in a larger building. So you will see where some schools said, can we have a part-time testing coordinator? Every school didn't ask for it, but I'm sure as I'm mentioning it, if I were to say, raise your hands if you want it, they would all raise their hands at the elementary level. We do have testing coordinators at the secondary level. So what we want to do tonight is take you through this and make sure that you understand what's being requested. It does represent every school, every department, and pretty much we received some emails from some staff who said, this is what I would like in terms of sick day payouts. We meet regularly with the LEA, and I know bereavement days was something that the LEA brought to our attention as a request that they would like to see, as well as some of these things on this list for that. In most cases, these big ticket items are not stuff. Most of the stuff items were small, manageable. We could handle them through switches in budget and instruction. Most of the things that our buildings are asking for are people to support our students. So they are all on this list. And I'm going to take a moment to kind of just take you through a few things. And then at the end, we can take some questions and have some discussions. I'm going to ask Monet to point out some things that are probably like, we don't really have a choice on that one. As you go through, there are going to be some things in here that are going to be forced that we're going to have to do unless we make some other choices. So like I said, on page 5, I think it is, 1, 2, and 3 are all of the salary proposals that you received last week, and that is a guesstimate. And let me just speak to subs, because subs is a dicey one. You can increase the sub budget really, really high, but if you need that many subs, you're probably not filling positions, which means you'll have leftover money there. So we kind of went middle ground. We put 75, it's about $75,000 to $100,000. That will cover that. But if we get in a situation where we are this year, where we have unfilled positions, we end up transferring the money that that person would have made into the sub budget or into the coverage budget for the teachers who are doing that. Number 4 is Bass, and you can see Bass is a small school, 2 teachers per grade level, with 1 request on a big ticket item. That doesn't mean there weren't other requests that Monica Hendricks made in terms of instruction that we made those changes. And it's for the testing coordinator, because Bass is one of those schools that does not have an assistant principal, and the media specialist is handling that. Bedford Hills is next, and you can see a variety of things, and I want to point out the gifted teacher. We have often had conversations about gifted programs in the base schools, in addition to what we offer in the Go Center. And Bedford Hills happens to have several children who, some have been invited to the Go Center and want to stay at the base schools, and some children who are also talented, who could qualify if we had more space available to them. Currently, our instructional coach, who coaches the teachers in the elementary buildings, also serves as the gifted teacher. So if you have a large portion of new staff, you have a larger coaching need than you would if you have veteran staff that may not need that coaching need. If you have a larger amount of students that you're trying to serve, you may have a larger need. So I suspect that that's why you would see that here. Our related arts program in the middle school, that is what I call the decimal, in the elementary schools. That's what I call the decimal program. If you want to look and see, where do you have people who are 0.8, 0.6, 0.2, it's in art and music in our elementary schools. So many of them do not have a full-time music teacher or a full-time art teacher. And in some cases, a music or art teacher might be covering 3 elementary schools. And almost all of them value that culture and climate of having that person in there to serve their students. It also offers gives them an opportunity to offer more sections of art and music, which is the prep time that our staff, our teachers get during that. So you will see that. School counselors, social workers, we've been talking about those, the counseling ratio, and just trying to make that. And you can see that as we move into Dunbar Middle School, that they're requesting an additional school counselor and a social worker to serve the school. Moving towards EC Glass, you can see a variety of things, including a move to have the counselors go from 10 months to 11 months. And that is so that they can be here during the summer and serve students. We can get schedules up and fixed and running so that the first day of school, we're off and running. That same request is on the heritage end as well. There are some additional needs, and we talked about this last year with the athletic director now stipend, because we could not find a full-time person. Employees were covering that, as well as training needs. And you'll see a program for ninth graders at EC Glass. It's something that we used to do in the past called the Link Crew program to help ninth graders transition into the high school. Another request that we saw multiple areas is in-school suspension. So no one wants to really see the students just go home. We want in-school suspension to be productive, and currently that's covered by an instructional assistant. And many of the buildings have requested that that position be moved to a teacher, a certified teacher position, so we can actually have high quality instruction during in-school suspension for that. Empowerment Academy, which is currently at RCI, we gave a half-time SPED teacher this year to share with Fort Hill, and as we have more students with special needs, there's a need for an additional SPED teacher, as well as space. So, you know, we rented space at RCI, and they are currently on the first floor. And if they could get additional space, they can offer more classes to more kids and spread those classes out. Fort Hill currently does not have assistant principals, but does have coordinators. And there's a request to increase that stipend for the coordinators. They do an awful lot of home visits as well, and they also have tutors. You can see that there. Preschool. Preschool is a big topic, and you can see that the Hutchinson Early Learning Center goes on for a couple pages in terms of their investment in pre-K. We have a pre-K 3 pilot, which we want to expand, and Polly can give you some data about that, and there's a request for some additional resource. We have no resource teachers, no behavioral coaches currently serving Hutchinson Early Learning Center, and the goal there is to give the kids the full experience, but also intervene as early as possible. Again, going through, you can see HES with some custodial support, some instructional assistance, as well as these interventionists. Now, part of that may be, we may be able to put in CARES money if it's a short-term position that's only 2 years, but specifically to address learning needs. Heritage High School, going down that list, you can see everything from school counselors, as I already talked about, to drama, world language, and math. And they are in need of an additional math teacher, particularly for the Algebra 1 program there. Lincoln Elementary School, again, possibly an additional 4th grade teacher. Here's another case of the art that we talked about, the library assistant to help out in the library, as well as a school counselor. Lincoln Middle School, you'll see some trends. Again, you see the in-school suspension and the need for changing that to a teacher. You see a similar request for a social worker just for the school and a SPED teacher. And the 3 middle schools all together would like an athletic trainer that's dedicated to the middle school athletic program, which is very vibrant. Paul Monroe, not too many requests there in terms of big ticket items, library assistant, instructional assistants. R.S. Payne had a few going down that list, mostly assistants, but again, you'll see the need for a testing coordinator, and interventionist specialist. Sandusky Elementary, possibly a grade 4 testing coordinator, and as the numbers in Sandusky start to creep up a little bit, there's always a request for an assistant principal. Until, to his credit, that request has come every year that I have been here, and I usually don't bring it forward because I say you're probably not going to get it, but in full transparency, I put it on this year. If you've ever been to Sandusky and you sit outside his office, that is where all of the friends line up, and as the only administrator in the building, as we have in several of our buildings, if it's an IEP meeting, it's that principal. If it's a discipline issue, it's that principal. If it's a parent that just came up that needs someone to talk to, it's that principal. And for that reason, Mr. Womack has put that here, and I've shared it with you. And again, I'm not going to go through every single school because you'll start to see as you go through the next page, you'll see some similar things. I will skip down to number 81, which is SMS Business Ed Teacher. And Sandusky Middle School, of the 3 middle schools, is the only one that doesn't have a business ed teacher. So that's why you see an isolated request there for that business ed teacher. And then you'll get down to the virtual academy. And we currently have teachers in the virtual academy that are teaching multiple grade levels. We have a waiting list for the virtual academy that is growing. And Mr. Boyd did a great job of sharing with us the needs. He did a wonderful presentation, which we can also share with you. There's also a need for content area teachers at the secondary level, as well as space. He too is at RCI. And although it is a virtual program, the teacher's office is the classroom, and often they are sharing. So sometimes it's a little problematic if 2 teachers are trying to teach at the same time or hold office hours or give students individual instruction. So that takes you through all the schools, and then you start to shift into the departments, starting with the C&I department. And one of their biggest things I'll point out is 97 and 98 is gifted education, particularly beefing up what's going on at the middle school. And I know that has been a question that this board has asked. You'll see a couple of intervention specialists there as well. We've received a few increases from CVCC in terms of their tuition, so that's part of a no-brainer. We have to do that, but you'll also see that there are 10 slots in for number 117 for the University of Lynchburg DE education courses. That's a new education program that we approved. And if you go down, you'll see additional requests in terms of CTE as well. The 120, the only thing from equity and community relations is probably coming from Partners in Ed, and I believe that the committee has met a couple times, and there is a request to add a half-time position solely dedicated to supporting PI. So you will see that on there. And then we come to the finance department. So I'm gonna pause and let Ms. Davis talk about 121 and 122.
Okay, so as you guys saw earlier today, oh, Siri thought I was talking to her. So as you saw in the report I sent earlier today, our health insurance, our revenue is just not meeting the need. And that's after the 7% increase that we did last year. We're asking for an additional 10% increase to cover the cost. We don't want to put this on the employees. So that would be an additional $815,000. And then our liability insurance has also increased dramatically this year. And I've heard that that's the case for a lot of the schools. So we're asking for an additional $400,000 to cover that cost.
So go ahead,
I'm sorry. And then we also, I just wanted to talk about our, and I know you haven't gotten there yet, but going on insurance, our auto insurance has also increased quite a bit. So we're asking, if you look on page, what number that is, 15, on number 145, we're asking for additional $120,000 to cover the cost of our auto insurance.
So those are examples of things that are a little bit out of our control, but we know that we have to budget for. So I did want to take a pause and say not everything in this big ticket item is a person. You know, as you continue down the way, you'll see some IT needs in terms of, you know, we've provided devices now all the way down to grade 2, I believe, when we need to go home and do remote learning. We provide devices for families, but 3 through 12 definitely have devices available, plus expanding our footprint, our network, our system. You know, we just received some CARES money to do even more expansion, and we need people to just help and maintain and monitor that, as well as keep us up and running. So you'll see a couple positions in there. Some of you often call me about our grounds, and you know, sometimes the weather's not so friendly and helping things grow a lot faster than we can get them cut. So there's a request for additional grounds person, as well as a maintenance craftsman with specific talent in HVAC and boiler, as we just heard Mr. Gasky talk about. Little incentive for our maintenance personnel who get the advanced certification, journeyman certification. A stipend, we have stipend for National Board Certified for teachers and RBTs. So there was a request here. They call it the white fleet, which is the other transportation, not our buses, but our maintenance vehicles. Some of them are getting very old, so you'll see a request for putting in place a white fleet rotation plan. And then we come to special education and student services, where you will see several requests that fall more on the psychologists, testing, having more supervisors to help with the work. Special ed currently has 2 supervisors. And then you'll see intervention specialists, or what we're calling the restorative justice coordinators are also on there. A lot of orientation programming and developing down there as well, as the need for an additional van for our social workers, and van, not car, because some of our families are beyond car. When we need to pick them up, they require a van. And then you'll see the bereavement days and the sick day payout increase that have been more generated by conversations with staff. So, for purposes of understanding what we do, normally we would receive this request, which is upwards to about $16 million, and the administration would be working, going back and forth with the buildings, back and forth with the departments, prioritizing, making a multiple year list to kind of get this down a little bit to something that we think between the school board and city council that we can adequately propose and get funded. But this year we wanted this full transparency for the board to see everything that was requested and understand the process that we use as a team to make those decisions. So now what I want to do is just pause, because I did a lot of talking, and take questions on things that are in here. And I also have, like I said, directors who are available for questions if you have something specific about one or more of the items here.
Dr. Gupta.
So let me take a step back, and I know this is a very important list. Last year, I have a couple of questions in that process. What was the money contribution from City of Lynchburg? Was it 39 million? How much was it?
Roughly.
About 39.8.
And then this year, the salary increase of 4.2 million in the first 3, this will be on top of that 39 million, or will that be part of that 39 if you go with the base?
If we just did salary only,
Let's just, that 4.2 million proposed increase, that'll be new money we need, right?
we're also getting new money. If you look at your revenue sheets, we're getting about $8 million of new money in state money, as well as having to have a local match of $4 million. So we are seeing an increase just on the state end, which includes about a $1.6 million compensation supplement. So the state has increased its portion, and we haven't given a number to what the city would so that we would have a total at this point.
So I'm not clear. So state is contributing 4 million and we are doing 4 million in compensation?
The state has raised our budget by 8 million.
8 million.
And has requested that in order for us to take the 8 million, we must do the local match of 4 million.
So this 4
The
million.
salaries that we propose, even if the state didn't do anything, if we followed this salary proposal, which was to get everybody up and over $13 an hour and so on and so forth, that would cost us, what was it, 4.3 million? I think it's a total for that. So the numbers sound the same, but they're not, they're just coincidental.
So the city match will be how much?
We don't know yet. The city match will be whatever we ask for this. Their local match, in terms of what they are required to do, is somewhere in, I think it's about 26 or 28 million for what they are base minimum required. Now, they've given us 39, 42 in the past, so.
And of course, that'll be a discussion at some point about level funding, et cetera, and what will make most sense when we get over there to them. Any further questions, Dr.? Any other board members, Dr. Sinha?
So I just want to check my understanding. So you provided this list, which, taking last year as an example, we did not see, we just saw kind of aggregated.
What you saw last year was the result of the work that administrators do. So we get this list, and then we go back and forth with them, and we say, prioritize your needs. What would you, and if you get this year, maybe we can squeeze this in next year, and so on and so forth. But in full transparency, because there have been requests like restorative justice. Well, if that didn't make the priority list, this board wouldn't see it. You'd ask me, where is it? So I want to make sure you see everything that we see, which I suspect if we had this list last year, it was probably even more than $16 million last year that we whittled down to bring to you all for consideration when we do that. So we are being more transparent with the board so that the board understands the process that we use to make these decisions, and also see how difficult it is, because as you look at some of these things, particularly at school levels, it's hard to choose or prioritize one school over another.
Thank you for that clarification, because that was sort of the next place I was going is, you know, for these where there's multiple requests for one school, it helps us kind of put this in perspective, and if we have to make decisions, whether, you know, where to hold the line, where to fall on our sword for more funding, to have these prioritized. I think back to my Christmas wish list on Amazon. You can do highest, high, medium, low, and lowest, knowing that in a perfect world that it'd all be great. So, but my understanding is that y'all go through that, and so we'll see a more refined list after you've done that vetting or not.
Well, that is part of why I brought it this way, because that's what we've always done. Yet there have been questions that have been asked about, do you make this? Do you make these decisions? So we're letting you see the front end of what we have to do. And to your question of high, medium, and low, each individual building or department does that for what they put on the list. So Dr. Coleman may have his 1, 2, 3. Dr. Nellis has his 1, 2, 3. I've got 6. So now I have to take 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 and make it 1 to 6, and then continue to add everybody else's and prioritize it. I will say our priority has been first do salaries and figure out what that big chunk of money is, because that will dictate where we can go, and then start looking at this in a more stepwise approach.
Right here, Dr.
Just continuing on, sorry, I have a couple of things. I appreciate this level of detail, but and maybe I'm asking too much, but it'd be helpful to have some context of like, what is the current staffing in these areas? And, you know, how has demand for a thing grown? So for example, a good example last year was the English as a second language. And so the question was, have we seen a jump in the number of students? And the answer was, well, not really. However, the vast majority of them have no English skills at all. So it's a bigger mountain to climb. So that gave us context for what the nature of the need was and why we're adding to it. So I don't know how you do that, just to run down the staffing and give us a sense of, you know, how to evaluate these, in terms of evaluating priorities.
I will say with each staff, so take fourth grade teacher. If you sat in our budget meetings, you would have heard this is how many I have in first, second, third grade. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this teacher over here. This group is going to come here, and it's going to be 22 kids per class, or it might be 27 kids per class if I don't get an extra teacher. So those conversations have been had to justify why there's a fourth grade teacher on here. In terms of, I'll take Hutcherson. They don't have any resource, art or music. Elementary teachers get their prep time when kids go to art and music, but the pre-K teachers do not. They are art and music. So there was a request that said that that would be beneficial for not only the kids, but also the staff with that. So there was a conversation that they had with us regarding what that need is. When we do special ed, you'll see special ed teachers here. The principals and the SPED director will say we have 200 kids here. We're anticipating moving kids here. These kids are aging out. They're going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and they're all going to land at Lincoln Middle School, and we're going to need extra staff. There's a conversation that the buildings have typically had with us as administrators that help us make the decisions that we have brought to you in the past, where we've been trusted to kind of whittle it down a little bit. This is that first level conversation that they have with us. You're sort of sitting on the outside watching the work that we would do that would say, how do we make a decision as to which one of these that we fund and bring to the board for consideration? But I will tell you, my experience has been you all ask a lot of questions about things that are in this list. Did we see this? Did we consider this? Did other schools ask for it? So we've answered your questions this year before you asked. So you get the big picture, and then we can move along in the budget process and really focus on the needs and the priorities. Like I said, each building principal, everybody had to prioritize their list as to what those needs are, including us. And as Ms. Davis said, when we look at health insurance, we're either gonna pass that cost on to our staff members, which none of us administratively want to do, or we're gonna make that a priority that we fund, which means we're not gonna be funding something else.
I think also, just to give some context here, when you ask about staffing, like at the elementary level, we currently don't have any assigned gifted teachers at the elementary level. They are the instructional coaches. At the elementary level, they do not have library assistants, so you'll see that that's a request. As Dr. Edwards mentioned, at the elementary level, it's either the testing coordinator is either the assistant principal or it's the library media specialist. So that a lot of these are because they don't currently have them. It's not an increase.
Yeah, so that's important information to know, because just looking at this, that's not always clear. I'm just saying, I think it's beneficial in our evaluating of that request, because I'm assuming this is all additional money. And getting back to that, I also, and maybe I heard what I want to hear, but implied that in some cases, something's eliminated or doesn't need as much funding, or there's a repurposing of funding that's already in the budget towards these things?
Not these.
Okay.
Usually not people. Those are like
New.
Instructional, not new, usually instructional materials. So when a principal says, I need to buy first grade carpets, they may say, but you know what I don't need? Because I just brought all of, the kits for that particular room. So I'm alternating. So I'm gonna move the money from there to purpose my carpets. And then next year, no carpets. And then the year after, we'll do second grade carpets. And so they have a system to their ask, and they shift money around rather than just saying every single year you get the same amount of money in every single line. We don't budget like that. We have them kind of do a zero-based type budget thinking about where do you need funds. There are some things that you do absolutely have to baseline though, because they're consumables and they get used all the time.
Okay, so, all right. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, and it's a point that's been made in previous budget iterations where it just seems like we're starting with last year's budget and then we're just adding expenses to it. And I think we have to make where we can demonstrate that we've changed the way we do things, or we invest less in this and more in this, and have the justification for it, so that we can demonstrate that we really are making thoughtful choices and due diligence.
That's what we have done. So there have been cases where we've repurposed a position, so you don't see a position request. So given the number of elementary buildings that we have, you should probably see more elementary requests for elementary teachers because the kids are in different buildings, different sizes. But we make those decisions to say, well, you know what? And for example, there's a school that says, I don't have 3 teachers at every grade level, because one year at a grade level, you could make it with 2, but another building needed 4. So we took the teacher from your grade level and moved it to another building where that need is. You all would never see that on a budget request, even if they asked for an additional teacher. That would have been something that we would have repurposed and whittled down in the beginning when we were doing our work. We do that a lot with SPED because the kids move from building to building. Even ELL, if you look at ELL, Sheffield right now is growing in ELL, so the requests are different. So that work is being done by us. That is the work that administrators we do, and we do that all year long too. It's not even like we wait to the end of the year to do some of that work. We have to make some of those changes right now in terms of the work that we do. This is once we get beyond what we can possibly shift, that it looks like these are some big ticket items that we're not going to be able to make this shift with our existing budget, especially if we do this. So if we're looking at $4.2 million of salary increases, then this becomes less and less possible. Okay. And that's why this part was important first.
I think it's a very important set of facts to share with the community, with the schools, and well, with everybody, the community, and in particular City Council, to say, well, our request started at this full amount, whatever that total is, of all these things. And after going through it and vetting it and prioritizing, we narrowed it down to this. To say, to show that difference, that we're really not just, it's not just some big wish list, which we get accused of doing. I'm not saying that that's what it is. We really did make hard choices. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm not trying to create extra work, but I think there are stories here that you can tell to convey the importance of some of these positions that are being requested, to just put them in some sort of better context for us.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Ms. Morrison?
So there are certain things on this list that we know that we have to do. We've talked about insurance and benefits. These are critical for our staff, and we've said that's a priority. But if you take all that out, we're asking for an additional $15 million.
This total. Yes, this total. That's not money that we have. Let the record show that I did not ask for $15 million. No. But if I were to just take, because I think the board generally wonders what happens on our end and whether or not we consider things. And have you thought about this? Have you asked about that? So you all now see what happens on our end. We actually do due diligence to meet with everybody, but that's just a total of all the requests.
And I appreciate that. Thank you, because I do think it helps us to see specifics for specific schools. However, I need to once again echo, I think, Dr. Gupta, when we add it this year, it's there for next year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless it was in the CARES fund.
Unless,
then it was specifically tied to, a temporary job.
But none of these positions would be tied to CARES money.
We did this last year where we put some in CARES money
Okay.
last year, but this is just what I'm requesting at a building level
Okay.
that I need. And I will, in all full honesty and transparency, I would not want any one of you to sit here and say, I know I had a conversation with a building principal and they said X, Y, Z, and I don't even see that on here. And then ask me why.
Yeah.
No.
It's on here. So, and community members too, they, remember, we had a budget. What do you think is important in the budget? It's the same thing we did when we heard the community say we want more additional gov seats. Showed up in the budget.
Yeah.
So this is the voice of what the people.
You just put it all together.
We
for
put
us.
it all together for you also that you can see it.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Dr. Edwards, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate all this information. It's a lot of minutia, a lot of detail here. I think it's going to be hard for this board to say this school gets this teacher, that school does not. So I would like to take a step back. I would like to look at big picture piece here. And please humor me if you will. I'd just like to confirm what I understand that we as a board are being told. Our current 2021 budget was $1.2 to $1.3 million.
Say that again, Mr. Harvey.
Our total current budget is $1.2 to $1.3 million, and I believe I got that off of our expenditure summary report.
You're talking about our total budget?
$100 million budget.
$100 million budget.
$102 million.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
$1.2.
My mistake. Yes, $102 to $103 million. Is that correct?
That's more in line.
So then what I understand is what we're saying is that we have already gone through that entire budget and we have looked at things that we did not spend money on and we looked at things that we wanted to spend money on, and we've already done that process between the two. So the chair is shaking his head, that's affirmative.
That's what we did when we met with them.
Okay, so we have already said that our previous year budget of $102 to $103 million is our base that we're working from. Then we're saying that we have $16 million in requests here. That's what I understand, correct?
That
Total.
includes the compensation if we do the
Right,
compensation.
compensation and all of the salaries, so 16 million. Okay. So then I understand that we are projecting 8 million from the state in additional funding. And to get that 8 million additional funding, City Council has to agree to providing 4 million in additional funding. Roughly, rough number.
That's the local match.
Okay, that's a local match. So we're looking at 12 million in additional funding this year from the state and city council.
Conceivably.
Okay? All right, so then if we're talking about this number here compared to what we are predicting that we would receive, we're talking $4 million bucks. We're still looking at. So what I'm asking is, I mean, if I take 16 and I subtract 12, I get 4, right? Just want to make sure. Okay, because I made the mistake of 1.2 million versus 102 million. So $4 million. And so I just want to make sure that we're looking at the order of magnitude that we're really sort of talking about here is $4 million. Don't want us to get overwhelmed with 16 and we're talking about 4 million in funding that right now is not accountable. We don't have a source that we know of that it's coming from either state or local.
Where does it show the 16 million?
Well, that's the total of all of these
That's the
items.
rough total of
Oh,
all of
okay.
these. Is that printed in here?
No,
No, she just gave us that number.
Oh, thank you.
So if I can continue. So what I'm trying to understand with a $102 to $103 million budget, even if I take out, we've always talked about 80% of this is personnel. It seems to me $4 million is obtainable in our budget, where we could conceivably have all of these positions. I'm not saying we should or that we need to. I'm just saying conceivably it's possible. Because we're not talking about having to go to city council and ask for $16 million.
No, Crystal Edwards did not.
No, I'm not implying that. I want to make sure that we all understand and our community understands. Because I still go back to the piece that we talked about at our last meeting. The funding for the salaries that we agreed to, the increase, is what's basically coming from the state already, right? That 5%.
1.6 million is what they give us. That's the compensation. So
That's based on the SOQ numbers
Yeah.
that we have, and that's based on our predictions. So it could end up working out a little different once we finally find out what the state actually says. I just ask, seems to me in 102 to 103 million, I think you could find 4 million out of that. Where we don't have to go with a hard ask, because I think we're gonna have to go to city council and ask for that 4 million to be able to get that 8 million match, or get that 8 million from the state. Am I correct in that? I mean, we can't get 8 million if city council says they won't give us the 4. And all of this is a moot point at that time.
Council? It doesn't have to, Mr. Harvey, it doesn't necessarily have to come from council.
We have to have a local match of $4 million.
out of our budget.
Out of our budget.
Anywhere out of our budget.
Right.
So, okay, well then, so we could conceivably we need to basically come up with $8 million within our budget.
4 million.
No, we're saying 8 now, because I'm saying we're 4 million short, and we're saying the other 4 million doesn't necessarily come from council, it could come from our budget.
Well, we have to be careful in making an assumption that council's gonna give us level funding, because you're assuming level funding. We did not get level funding in the past.
I'm not making any assumptions, I'm just saying this is what the information that we've been shared with.
Right, but our $100 million budget is based on council's 39 million, so we're assuming that we still would have 39 million to work with, plus whatever else the state gave us, then subtract this is what we need. So that's what I'm saying, that we just have to, there's an assumption.
Okay, I see the other hands, but Mr. Harvey still has the floor.
No, I feel like I've made my point. I think we can be good stewards, and I think we can really look at some of these, because I've talked to some of the staff within the schools about their needs. We see a lot in the elementary schools, these testing coordinators. The reason why we need the testing coordinators is because we have more testing. The reason why we have more testing, so we can have more data to be able to track student achievement. So some of these things that we're asking for are causing these needs to a certain degree.
The testing coordinators do not do IXL, or they do the SOL test, so it's not, we're not asking.
It's scheduling.
Right.
But I would hope that they would help with that, because if we've got that position there, I would hope that they,
Currently, the people who are in the testing coordinator role, the people who are assigned to it, are really focusing on SOL. They are not necessarily giving the IXL test, which is in the classroom.
What I would like
Because
to,
these people who are doing it now have another full-time job. So when the SOL testing season comes around in the fall and the spring, and then next year, 3 times a year, their full-time job is sort of gets pushed to the side a little bit so that they can focus on the test administration and coordinating and things like that. So that's why they're asking for these part-time testing coordinators, so that they can focus on it. And again, it will be seasonal, so there may be some other things that they can help with. But you just have to figure that out with, it's not a full-time position, it's a part-time position.
I want to remind the board, and I'm coming right to the, I know you all are eager to share. I want to remind the board that Dr. Edwards stated up front that she was giving us this panoramic view of everything. And you all know we could be here for the rest of the night asking questions tonight. This is for us to bring, she's brought it to us, we have a chance to look at it, and
And ask
we got a
questions.
lot of time in between before we come back the next time, because we're not gonna solve all of this tonight. Please keep that in mind. Then I also want to acknowledge that some of the board members have not commented at all, and I'm trying to be fair to the time we do have, lest you all say I kept you here all night. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet that would like to say anything? Mr.
If I
Shaw?
may, I understand exactly where Mr. Harvey's, your position, and I tend to agree with it. And I just want to confirm that, because I heard some different things, and I haven't gotten a real good feel that is what Mr. Harvey said, that the numbers and the position that he laid out, is that true? That we supposedly have, I would say, $12 million of money we may be able to get because you got the state funding of $8 million. I'm not sure I understand the full issue of contingency to get that, but is that a comfortable number of the $8 million that we can
Dr.
expect?
Sinha wants to weigh in.
Okay.
Hold on.
I just want to caution, if I'm understanding this that we got last week, there's of the state 8 million, 3.5 million is
Construction.
designated for construction, that's 43%. So I don't think that we can count that in your calculations, because it's designated money. And remember, all of this money has special designation, so we may not have as much flexibility in how we apply. Because last time we talked, you recognized it was more like 4.5 million that we're getting from the state, because we can't really use that 3.5 construction money except for construction.
Thank you.
I just want to
But
lay that
but
out there.
Thank you.
I would assume that would be elsewhere also in our budget. I mean, we budget within our 102 million, we budget some monies for school, for maintenance and facilities.
Record so states what Dr. Sinha stated. Anyone else like to weigh in on this discussion tonight? Dr. Gupta?
So that's what I wanted to say was 3.5 is set aside for construction. So we need 4 million match to get that other 4 million. But then we got a hole to backfill 2 years from now for those 3 million put in new positions we funded last year. So it's all green right now, but it'll be dark 2 years from now. So we don't want to be in a situation where we commit ourselves for a fixed cost funding, hire these people, and then tell them, no, we cannot fund you from here on. That'll be a disaster for this division. So we gotta be very careful that we don't get carried away with the money coming in, but not knowing it's not a variable cost, it's a fixed cost from here on.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Dr. Nillis, did you want to remark on
I
this
just,
tonight?
we need my personal, I want to see a prioritized list.
Okay. I
I
hear
mean,
you.
it's great to have the background.
You want
and-
us to prioritize them?
Yes. I can go and say, well, gee, what's the need for this particular teacher at this particular school, not knowing the demographics or what's
Right.
going on there currently, and, I mean, we'd be making arbitrary decisions, or it's gonna take us a really long time to go through these one by one and make some kind of reasoned decision.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Dr. Carty, would you like to share?
I think doing the budget it's you just can't win when you send it to us. When we see the prioritized list, then we ask, how do we get to this list? Now that we have this list, now we're asking, we want to see. And the other thing is, we've already told, I think when we're hiring people with the CARES money, we let them know that this is CARES funds, that this does not say that you're going to have this position forever and ever, and that they are aware of that, so they can't come back and say that we try to hire them and now we can't sustain that. They're told that this is with the CARES money, and when that money goes. And it's what every position, we look at them and we say, do we still need this position, or are we gonna make the change? So now it's just, so when you bring back the priority list, we're gonna say we need some, we wanna see the backdrop. So we have the backdrop, and I guess the next time we'll see the list.
Dr. Brennan, would you like to Sharon?
I sort of reiterate what Dr. Carter says, you can't win on either way. But thank you so much for providing the information. I think it is helpful for us to see at this level, and I hope we can come back with a prioritized list. I have two comments. One is that, and this is obviously in the big picture of things, but I do think that the mental health issue in our schools is so important. And I know that last year we tried to have positions to help with that. And I don't know if at some point, as part of this discussion or another discussion, we talk about what positions have we filled, you know, what can we fill, can we would not do. And it's still a little unclear to me, as an individual board member, the difference between what a school counselor is doing to support the families versus what a behavior coach may do, or what another person may do, which I think is all trying to do the same thing. But I just think that the emotional support, the crisis we have in our schools, in our students and, you know, children in the United States is so huge that try to get our hand around that package to have it be a defined thing. And the only question I have is that I'm assuming that the virtual academy piece would be under the CARES Act, since didn't we take funds to set the virtual academy up? So if we were to continue it, I would assume we continue those funds, and when those funds run out, we said at that point, we then decide whether that's a productive process that we go back to the council to fund.
We can certainly do that. Again, when we meet with them, we don't ask them to tell us what funding. We ask them
Sure.
to tell us their needs, and to prioritize their needs as they see fit. And they've done that. This is what this is. And again, just to go on record, I personally would like to do the job that you hired me to do, which is to prioritize the list, to come back to you to say, I think we should go to city council and stick to my original plan, which I mapped out when we first got CARES money, which said, we have all this money right now. We could help the city by decreasing, and we gave a lot of the CARES money. We did a capital improvement, things like that. However, I was real clear, and Dr. Gupta's my buddy because he holds me to how you're going to sustain it. We asked for 42, we went down. In 2 years, when we did that, I said, we're going to have to ask for 42 million if we're going to want to keep pace. I said that 2 years ago. I'm still sticking with my story that says, I know that we're going to have to continue to keep pace. We do not have revenue generated for salary increases, much less salary advances over increases. So part of what we're trying to do is get our people up and above other people's people while they're also getting the same 5% raise. And we have 11 and 10 for some of our lower wage employees. So we can certainly do the work. We can certainly come up with a number that we can take to city council and say, this is our request. We can justify our request. The exercise that we have here is, what role does this board want to play? As Dr. Carter says, not that I'm interested in winning anything because we're all on one team. And as one team, we have to agree, whose work is it? So I have come to you with a prioritized list where I have purposely left things off, and I've broken some hearts of people on the Zoom meeting saying, you're not getting that. For example, assistant principal, that has been asked of me for every year. You have not had it come this way because I've said in my list of priorities, while I understand what you need, that's not the priority at this point. It's not that it's not a need. It's not a priority. However, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of questions and a lot of inquiry with this school board. And a lot of what have you considered and what have you done? So we purposely brought you everything. And I started the night by saying, this is for information, so that you can see what we see. So your question to how you're supposed to prioritize the list, you're not, I am. That's what you pay us for. That's what we do, and we bring it back to you. But in transparency, should you know what people are requesting? Should you know what the building needs are? Should you have an understanding of what the difference between what's going on at Bass versus what's going on at Bedford Hills or EC Glass? Absolutely. But someone has to do the work. And Dr. Nillis is right. It takes a long time to go through this. It's hard for us. And there's 9 of you all if we charge that to you. But I need to leave this meeting with you all looking at me saying, please do the work that we hired you to do. do that, make a recommendation to us, or we want to do that work. And we want to go into it in that degree, so.
Well said, Dr. Edwards. The heads let me know that we want you to go and bring that back to us. What Dr. Carter would like to say.
One thing I noticed is that all of the priorities are asking for more support. They want, so you can see that everyone is tired and exhausted of doing numerous jobs. You can see that. So hopefully when you bring the priorities back, we'll acknowledge that and put the budget toward, because you can see everyone, they are tired of splitting up and doing 5 and 6 positions and then have to stay late to do their own job.
All right, well, thank everybody for your input, Dr. Gupta.
Just one, when you create the priority list, could you please create a column of new money, yes or no? So that it is coming from the existing budget lines, or you'll need new money for those priorities?
I can do it as a overall request. So for example, when I'm done, if I say, I think we can make this happen and we need 2 million more. I don't want to put, and we need 50,000 for the 4th grade teacher and start whittling. I don't want to identify it by position, but I can certainly say, this is what we think we can manage, which is inclusive of a few things, and this is what we think we need to additionally ask City Council for.
Because what's puzzling for me is the ADMs are down to 100, so how the state funding has gone up, that's what we can talk later.
There are a lot of variables. All right, thank you, Dr. Gupta. Thank you, board. Thank you for allowing us to have this discussion, and if you don't mind, we can move on to Section K, our new business item on 1, Middle School Program of Studies. Dr. Edwards for Ms. Pugh.
Absolutely, and I'm going to quickly turn it over to Ms. Pugh to go over the Middle School Program of Studies.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. You have the program of studies. It was in board docs. This is for middle school. At the last meeting, you approved high school program of studies, and we thank you for that. Very minor changes on the first page, just some housekeeping things in terms of board member changes and roles, and virtual academy there, being listed there. There are a few things in terms of some language. Really, the two things that I want to highlight. On page 13, you'll see a lot of red in terms of each school, middle school exploratory overview, the RISE classes being crossed out, marked out. And the RISE classes have not gone anywhere, and those are academic support classes. There's a RISE English 9, a RISE Math, English 8, and a RISE Math for each of the grade levels. Those have been marked out, but if you look at the top of page 13, that's still there. It's just being called mascot block, because each of the different schools called it something different based on their mascot. So at Sandusky Middle School, it's called Spartan Block. At Lincoln, it's Jaguar Block. And at Dunbar, it's Poet Block. And at the Virtual Academy, it's Trailblazer Block. And these courses are provided to build foundational skills for students to be successful. They're offered in all grades for math and English. And so I just wanted you to see, while it looks like that those RISE classes are being totally eliminated, they are not. They're just being replaced with a different name. The other thing,
I'm sorry, Ms. P, can I just ask to clarify, when you say page 13, is that, or page 12, is that of the document, or is that of the PDF file?
Page 13 on the PDF.
Yeah, I know, I see where they're deleted, but I was wondering where that section is that, oh, the mascot block, I see it, okay. So that replaces all that?
yes,
Okay, thank you,
I'm sorry.
thank you.
And the other change is on the next page, under high school credit courses offered at the middle school. You will see the drama course has been crossed through, stricken through, but we are going to make that change before we bring it back to you the next time. I didn't want to change it because you had already seen it. After some conversations with the staff in curriculum and instruction, there was some confusion here. So to me, when I present this to you and it's marked in red, that means we're removing the course and it's not going to be offered. And that's not the case. So we're going to add some language here. This is a high school credit course. It is offered at each school based on enrollment. So if enrollment numbers are high, sometimes it's offered at all 3 middle schools. If enrollment numbers are low at a particular school, it might be offered at Lynchburg Middle School one year and not at the other 2 that year because they don't have enough students to offer it. So we're going to change the language there, and I will send that to you before we bring it back to you for your approval. That was confusing to me, and after some conversation, we realized that it should not have been marked through. So those are the only 2 major changes. Are there any other questions?
This is for discussion tonight. Any further questions on the middle school program of study? Dr. Brennan and then Dr. Carter.
Ms. Pugh, thanks so much, because those were some of the questions I had about those programs. And then also at the beginning, I'm sure these are just wording changes, but I was so surprised that on page 3, and let's see here, so this is page 3 of the document. We make a comment about, we have a comment that says, selection of courses for students in middle school should be decision that will provide instructional rigor and challenge students in every subject area. Then we cross out, therefore we want students and parents, guardians to continue to select courses that will support the student's personal, academic, and career goals. Is that a VS? You know, I was surprised that was deleted.
No, because this isn't really policy. This is just a program of studies. It's just a guide for students and parents to make course selections. And I think when they meet with the students and the parents, especially at the middle school, the counselors would then work with them to make course selections that are going to support their personal, academic, and career goals. That was just something they thought was, I think, a given.
Any other question, Dr. Brennan?
No, thank you.
Dr. Carter?
My question is regarding the gifted education, just what has or is being explored to really beef up or enhance the gifted offering in all of the schools, all of the middle schools.
Absolutely. I think specifically at the middle school, as I mentioned earlier, I believe, Dr. Carter, you and I had a conversation, and you will see in the budget that was presented to you, there were 3 middle school gifted teacher positions and several at the elementary. Some schools requested them, but you would also see later on in the document that the curriculum and instruction department also requested some additional gifted teachers at the elementary level. They are currently working on the gifted program and identifying ways that they can offer more gifted opportunities at the base schools at the elementary level, as well as infuse those gifted opportunities at the middle school. So I don't have specific answers of exactly what is being done because they are right now revising and reworking that gifted plan. In order to probably make that gifted plan come to fruition, we will need those additional gifted staff, or those gifted staff, because currently we don't have any specific gifted teachers except at the Go Center.
All right, thank you. Dr. Gupta?
Can I just make this comment? I've been saying that for years. We have an excellent gifted program at the elementary school level. They go to Dunbar. We have that School for Innovation where the Section A still keeps them, elevated. They go to EC class for taking classes. But then when they go to high school, they fall flat. There's nothing there in terms of keeping that momentum we built up for gifted students at high school level.
Okay. Mr. Harvey, I see your hand.
I would like a comment on that from Dr. Edwards because my daughter goes to class and she's...
There's an AP courses that are gifted and talented kids enroll in, whether that's, an AP art or language or honors, chemistry or things like that. There isn't a separate gifted enrichment course specifically for kids. And even you had Mr. Reed on who talked about AP Capstone and some other opportunities for kids.
Right, Mr. Trost?
Deputy Pugh, again, referring back to page 3 of the document, the first item that's been redlined, talking about all middle school students replaced with the enrolled in classes in the 4 core academic areas. And again, I'm just, what was the rationale behind removing that statement about the core courses?
That I don't have the answer to. Ms. Yeager or Ms. Foster, can you speak to that? It's on page 3. It's the first read, all middle school students, and then you all have replace with are enrolled in classes in the 4 core academic areas.
Ms. Yeager?
Let me put my video on. Let me find this.
On page 3.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. I think because, you know what? I will have to look into that because I think there is probably a mistake that was made because it was supposed to cross out, replace all middle schools in the 4 academic areas. The only thing that was supposed to be introduced was replaced with are enrolled in classes. I think that it's an error. We'll definitely fix that.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that.
You bet.
Any further questions concerning the middle school program of studies for tonight in this discussion? Ms. Morrison?
So if we do review this further and we have questions, we just send them to you,
Please.
Ms. Pugh, ahead of time.
Absolutely. So again, this is just for information tonight. We'll bring it back for approval. Please review it carefully, and if you have questions, you can email them to me, and I'll be happy to work with the curriculum and instruction team and the middle school counselors to get answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. If there are no other questions tonight, then if we could comply with what was just recommended of each of us, I think we can have a good discussion next time for the action. All right? Thank you all. Thank you all for that. We will now move to section L, the superintendent's comments.
Absolutely. So as we started with Happy Black History Month, it's also National School Counselors Appreciation Week. So we definitely want to celebrate them. And I challenge each of us to take this opportunity to make a meaningful contribution in a child's life, especially now. What we're seeing right now, they need us more than ever. So make it memorable. Make history yourself by taking an investment in a child. You never know how much that investment may pay off. And sometimes those of us who are educators know that sometimes it's years later that we find the impact of something that we did for a kid later in life, and it makes it all worth it. It's why we all do these jobs. So just wanted to say that, and looking forward to celebration this month. And thank you to Reverend Hutchison for kicking it off for us. As we stated, we have had lots of meetings. We have been immersed in budget conversations. And thank you to my entire team that is still on the call listening so that we can continue our meetings moving forward with this process for budget. So we will bring back the prioritized budget along with an ask for that. I also want to just remind the school board that we will, within next month, have the facility study coming back, the demographic study, which is another large plate of work for us to do. So we've got a lot of work to do moving forward, and some very difficult decisions with regard to the facility study. We had the initial, Blair came and did the initial information for us. And I suspect once he comes back with the full plan, that it'll make the conversation continue to be interesting here as we move forward with that. Just a bunch of thank yous to staff for all of your cooperation during snow days and remote learning days, and just being so extremely flexible in what we've done, and their tolerance and just patience and understanding as we work through this pandemic, which I did send the latest VDH numbers out to the school board for our community. And as you heard earlier, we are not really making an impact on increasing our vaccination rate, despite the numerous efforts that Lynchburg City Schools has made to partner, to offer clinics in-school clinics, out-of-school clinics, we are pretty stable with the vaccination rate and the booster rate. That's one of the mitigation strategies that will work. So I will again just send that message out to everybody who can get vaccinated and is able to get vaccinated to please do so, get boosted with your time. If you are a Lynchburg City School member or staff member, participate in our VISTA program, our testing program. These are all options for us to help keep our schools open as mitigation strategies as we move forward. I also want to give a shout out to our community who have been planning a lot of events that are surrounding and wrapping their arms around our kids. We need that too. Our kids need love in school and out of school. So thank you, community. And there are going to be a couple events coming up to celebrate the youth in this community. So I look forward to that. And then don't forget, on February 15th, we will have a special presentation as part of our board meeting in celebration of Mr. Kelso and the marker that will be placed outside. So,
Thank you so much, Dr. Edwards. We'll begin with board comments now, starting with Mr. Harvey.
No comment this evening.
Dr. Gupta.
No comments.
Dr. Sinha.
I just want to say I appreciate that exhaustive list so that we can see what was discussed and shared and request, and I do trust you to do the prioritization, and I apologize if I seemed unappreciative earlier in my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sinha. Dr. Nillis.
No comments.
Dr. Carter.
Just a shout out to all the school counselors during this month and for the wonderful job that they're doing, and that it's just, I know that a lot of times they may feel overwhelmed, but just to keep up that work, because it really does impact students, and to all the student athletes also.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis and Dr. Carter. Thank you. Ms. Morrison.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for challenging us to make a difference for kids. I had the pleasure of working with many, many gifted staff at EC Glass, and two who impacted more students at EC Glass than anyone else, Mr. John Toller, who is our head custodian, and Sergeant Main. He was an administrative assistant, and their kindness and love and care for students kept a lot of students out of trouble.
Wow.
And so I am grateful to have had that opportunity to work with them, but to also know them and their impact. And I am forever grateful for that.
Thank you for saying that, Ms. Morrison. The board appreciates that. Dr. Brennan.
Just a quick thank you to all the staff as we talk about these high-level things of calendars and budgets and things. Thank you all so much for your work that you do every day to teach our children, care for our children, keep them in school. And as an individual board member, I just want to thank Dr. Sinya and Dr. Coleman for going to Richmond and representing us. That was a huge commitment on your part to do it, and we all really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Mr. Trost.
No comment. I won't hold anybody up.
All right. Thank you all very much. I do want to just quickly say this. First thing I want to acknowledge that this is School Board Appreciation Month. And there are 850 school board members in Virginia. And of course, we are focusing on the 9 of us here in Lynchburg. And I, as chair, just want to thank each of you for the outstanding work that you do. And we all do as well as we do because of our great superintendent and staff, but also because of our clerk. And so I have a certificate here, 2022 VSBA School Board Clerk Appreciation Week, which will be February the 14th to 18th. Hope we can shower some love. And this is to Tina Day, coming from Teddy Martin, VSBA President, and Gina Patterson, our Executive Director. And we thank you, Tina, for all of the outstanding work that you do. Barbara Sanders as well, and Sanders as well, we'll get it to her. And then we have a certificate coming from the President and Executive Director for each board member. And so I just pass those out to each of you. And thank you for the work that you do. You see all of the informational items before you, and concerning upcoming meetings, please govern yourselves accordingly. Meeting is adjourned.